A man saw his wife in the stable next to the horse when he realized what was happening. Hello, dear subscribers and guests of our channel. Today, I want to share with you a life story narrated by an author. Wishing you a pleasant time watching our video. The young couple was about to go to bed when suddenly thunder started rumbling and lightning flashed at that exact moment. Rain began beating against the windows, and the sound of the stallion could be heard. Pegasus is scared, Alice worried and put on her cloak. He's not a child, grumbled Sergio. Nothing will happen to him. But what if he breaks something? The young woman said and rushed to the exit. The only thing that could break is our marriage, the man whispered. Sergio stood still for a while, unable to decide what to do. Should he go look for his wife? It was night, anything could happen. Or should he go to bed? It was night. He should wake up early for work. He opted for the second option. After all, they were in a somewhat safe area, and nothing would happen to his wife or the stallion. Sergio hated Pegasus. This one-year-old stallion had become the most important thing to his wife. She cared for him as if he were a child. The man was already regretting giving in to his wife's pleas and buying an innocent horse for her. I would have preferred to buy a crocodile. That way, Alice would have spent less time with it, he thought. He had recently started thinking about a crocodile. He wouldn't have a pet like that without reason, but who knew what would happen with that horse? Initially, he thought the problem would be controlling the space in the yard, making room for it. But the real problem turned out to be the other. His wife spent all her time with a Pegasus. Sometimes Sergio hated himself for making the hasty decision to buy the stallion. All because he was concerned about what others would say. At that moment, it seemed easy to share news about his pet with his colleagues at lunchtime, as if it were something of little special importance, something ordinary. He still boasted to his friends, not wanting to admit that he was tired of the horse, tired of the unhappy competition with the horse. Sergio considered selling Pegasus, but Alice didn't want to part with her new friend anymore. He's a family member, and you don't betray family. Besides, we are responsible for the animals we domesticate. He had to hear such sermons from his wife on more than one occasion. Sergio no longer offered to attract and sell the new member of his family. He just mentally cursed the day they brought an animal home and were happy. His wife, on the other hand, was obsessed with horses, and there was nothing to be done to appease that passion. Meanwhile, Sergio was obsessed with his wife, so he endured, hoping it would pass, that she would calm down, that she would offer to get rid of that stallion. Sorry, Pegasus, now that was the only way to call him. Stallion seems very distant. Loveless, said Alice. You wouldn't just call your children children, would you? Speaking of children, they had recently learned they would have a new family member. Sergio wanted children. His wife was 30 and he was 35, so the sooner the better. Later there would be less energy. Children are of their own blood. He wouldn't be jealous of children, but a horse. With those thoughts, he sighed. The man fell asleep. His wife hadn't arrived yet. Sergio dreamed of the sea and the beach. They were both relaxed, enjoying the sun's rays, but it was actually a cold and rainy glow, and he wanted warmth. Suddenly, the sky turned gray, thunder, lightning, and a frightening neigh from the horse. Sergio woke up, jumped out of bed, looked around. It was calm. There was a storm outside the window, and Alice had not yet appeared. He looked at the clock and found he had slept half an hour. Annoyed, he went out to look for his wife. Spending the whole night with the stallion was the last straw, especially because Alice had a husband who also needed attention. Alice stayed by Pegasus and reassured him. God, woman, it's just a storm. Soon you'll bring the poor devil inside and to bed with us. Sergio spoke disgustedly. It's just that his first storm is scared. His wife defended the stallion, of course, as if, just like his first spring and before that he had his first winter, and every day he has something that comes first to him. It never ends, does it? It ends when you come to live with him because he needs more attention than I do. The husband shrugged. It's just jealousy. Alicia smiled. How can I not be jealous? Sergio was angry in his thoughts. The woman spent more time with the horse than with him, even at night. Maybe I'm afraid of storms too. I just don't make as much noise as he does, Sergio defended. Alice laughed and hugged her husband. Finally, they went to bed. He assured his wife that Pegasus was safe, as he did to gain his wife's attention almost every day. It's a good thing the stallion can't talk. Otherwise, he would do better than Sergio. What saved the man was his sense of humor. At home, Alice always listened to her wife's enthusiastic stories about how great it was to have Pegasus, and at work, she boasted to everyone about how great it was to have a horse at home. no but intentions. You might as well have horses, he told them, so he wouldn't suffer alone. Unfortunately, no one else was excited about a horse. Everyone thought the horse brought too many obligations. Taking a ride is easy, but there was no place to keep it at home. Although Sergio convinced his friends that a horse is not an elephant, it doesn't take up much space. Alice, meanwhile, already dreamed of opening a riding school to train children and adults there. She was thinking about this idea all the time, that she was pregnant, although it seemed crazy to her husband. Sergio blamed the hormones that all pregnant women have, some pineapples at night and strawberries in winter, and his beloved Alice wants to raise a horse. A woman in her right mind wouldn't make plans like that, right? How are you going to manage a whole school? A stallion won't be enough. You need another place. Sergio, just thinking about more than one horse made him feel bad. The man was explaining to his wife how long it would take her to comb all the horses and how big the space had to be for them. You need a big stable, but the field the horses need to run. Many worries, her husband told her. But one day, Alice came to him with some papers. That was her answer. She had made a whole plan. She had even found a location. An old riding school. It had to be cleaned and renovated. She even had the staff already. They just needed different conditions. She even made a business plan with a relatively small investment. She didn't want to invest in something. Alice smiled innocently, showing the not small amount she needed for her project. In a few years, it will be worth it, and it's virtual money. It's a promising investment. Riding is becoming fashionable now. Sergio promised to think about it. Of course, he was interested in investing in something more calmly and without risk. Of course, it couldn't be in a school, but he couldn't displease his wife during pregnancy, so he said nothing against it. When she gave birth, she would be too busy with the baby and would forget the crazy idea of setting up the riding school. The man hoped it would be like that and didn't express much annoyance, although he was extremely annoyed because Alice spent too much time in Pegasus's stable. She was always taking care of him, brushing him, talking to him as if he were a human child. Then, he had a new idea. He realized that talking to his pet calmed her down and even made her feel better. He said she didn't need a psychologist, she could talk to Pegasus. One day, Alice greeted her husband cheerfully when he returned from work and began to tell him enthusiastically that now the equestrian school plan would be worthwhile. Even faster, she had read that for children and adults, horses are a substitute for visiting a psychologist, especially those with developmental problems or mental issues. It helps them a lot to communicate with horses. Even autistic people undergo this type of therapy, and horses are also used in rehabilitation after stroke, trauma, and much more. That's how horses are. That's equitherapy. Now, in addition to the school, they will also be able to offer rehabilitation for these people. They can help people. It's great. In our country, there aren't many of these centers, which makes it even more promising for the business, Alice said enthusiastically. Sergio seemed like he would soon have mental problems, and the horses wouldn't help with that. He would need a serious clinic. But he tried to endure everything because his wife was pregnant. His friends told him that their wives had done worse things. He was lucky in that regard, and if Alice enjoyed herself with a good stallion, so be it, especially towards the end of the pregnancy. It was good for her. Even the doctor confirmed that. What can you do for someone you love? But at work, Sergio didn't stop praising his stallion, even in front of his friends. He was ashamed to admit that an animal was causing tension in the family. Everyone around him heard his enthusiastic comments and envied the man. The time of childbirth was approaching. On that day, Sergio had a difficult contract at work. He could hardly close the deal. Everything was finalized at the last moment. They had to adjust a lot of things with the partners. They didn't like the terms the whole time and almost lost a good client. Many nerves were spent on this. So, Sergio returned home exhausted. He didn't even feel like eating, just lying in his wife's arms. Then he hid his car. He called a tow truck. While waiting, it started raining heavily. The crane driver was slow. It seemed like it was his first day on the job. Sergio had to help him. He was soaked to the bone. Sergio returned home annoyed, and to add more negative accusations to the day. When he arrived, his wife wasn't home. So, he became even more irritated. Not once during the day did she call him, asking why he was late. He didn't smell dinner, although it was always done by that time, and she wasn't even present to greet him as she did every day. She was obviously reassuring her stallion. Of course, her first rain in her first month of winter, a good reason. And she doesn't care if her husband had an accident or something happened to him. The horse is more important to her. Sergio angrily went to the stable. But on the way, he came to his senses. He was in a bad mood. He could shout, and his wife was about to have a child. He couldn't upset her. So, he took a deep breath, put on a smile, and entered the stable. Silence, only Pegasus's snores could be heard, but the stallion wasn't in the barn. He was lying on the ground. Sergio immediately became worried, felt that something was wrong. He approached and was speechless. His wife was unconscious, with the newborn next to her, and Pegasus was very close to them, as if warming them with his body. And it was very cold outside. The baby was without anything. What had happened? Sergio didn't understand. The man came to his senses. He called an ambulance, took off his soaked coat, and quickly, with his jacket, wrapped the baby in Pegasus or stood watching the man move his ears. The doctors arrived quickly and took the mother and baby. Fortunately, both were alive. Although they had spent a lot of time in the stable, there were no serious injuries to the mother or baby. The horse protected them from the cold with his warmth. Alice herself couldn't exactly say what had happened. She was apparently in shock. She remembered the pain in her belly and then woke up in the hospital room. While his wife was in the hospital, Sergio took care of Pegasus and thanked his family. Then he realized that being with the animal really calmed him down. He became less nervous and more upbeat. They seemed to be right, all those trainers and motivators who convince people that you have to talk about something first for it to become a reality. If you don't have money, tell everyone you do, then you'll really have it. Sergio told his friends how great it was to have a horse, how beautiful it was to have it, and it really was. Now he didn't complain about Pegasus anymore. He was only grateful to him because he saved 2 important lives for Sergio, his wife and son. They were quickly released to go home with a happy father. Sergio was right. The man was no longer jealous of his wife. Furthermore, he seriously decided to consider the plan to open an equestrian school. He analyzed, made some edits, and helped his wife dedicate herself professionally to horses. In the end, it wasn't as bad as he imagined. His wife didn't spend all day in the stables. The equestrian school had qualified people, Alice took care of the baby at home, and the husband ran his school, and of course, didn't forget about his little one. Sergio learned many things after that, to trust his beloved, to program his own thoughts for a good life, and to be calm. Thanks to Pegasus, he convinced himself that communicating with the animal could relieve stress, which helps a lot in modern life. His equestrian school became a kind of health center, where sick children and people who needed psychological and physical rehabilitation could go. And Sergio's family ended up with resentments and jealousy, probably. All thanks to the wonderful qualities of horses. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you share your thoughts in the comments and support the channel by liking and subscribing. A big hug, and until the next story.
Antonio just turned 75, but he felt much younger. That happens when someone lives in peace with themselves and doesn't conflict with the outside world. Antonio lived in a pleasant house he proudly built himself throughout his life. He dreamed of becoming a farmer, but it wasn't possible in his advanced age, becoming an entirely unattainable goal. Antonio tried not to dwell on it much and kept hope for the future. Those who knew Antonio knew the real reason behind his setbacks: his children. They believed others were responsible for their happiness. Carolina and Daniel were born just a year apart and were deeply loved by their parents. Everything was fine until they became teenagers. Daniel was the first to develop issues. He often got into trouble due to poor performance in school and frequent absences. Some said Daniel was involved with gangs and engaged in highly suspicious activities at night. For some reason, the teenager managed to escape consequences. When the police got involved, Antonio tried to talk to his son. Unfortunately, nothing good came out of that educational moment. Bianca was the first to realize her son was heading down a questionable path he chose himself, but like any mother, she continued to hope he would improve and achieve something positive in his life. However, when her daughter Carolina started following her brother's steps, Bianca began to despair. She couldn't understand how her children had become so unbearable. Of course, The parents made every effort to steer Daniel and Carolina in the right direction, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. Tired of endless fights and confrontations, Bianca understood she couldn't continue living that way. There had been disagreements before between Bianca and Antonio, but they finally reached a point of no agreement. Bianca decided that divorce was the best solution for their situation. Bianca's decision sent Antonio into a severe state of shock. He hoped they could help their children, but when left to deal with the problem alone, he understood that everything was destined to fail. After the divorce, Antonio faced the real problems, as his children had already veered off and barely graduated high school. They refused to continue their studies and began living a life that was practically akin to that of outlaws. Carolina and Daniel abused alcohol and spent their father's hard-earned money. Rumors had it that meanwhile, Bianca remarried and started a new life. Antonio harbored no resentment toward her, knowing he was also responsible for what happened. Time passed, Carolina and Daniel continued to get into many troubles. Daniel spent time in the county jail, and Carolina had several unsuccessful attempts to start a family. Antonio repeatedly begged his children to come to their senses and think about their futures, but it was all in vain. Antonio eventually grew tired of his futile attempts to reason with his children and accepted reality. When he heard a knock on his front door, he immediately knew his son or daughter had come to ask for money. Being a kind and caring father, he never refused to help his children. He tried to give them everything to make them happy. Unfortunately, Carolina and Daniel's happiness relied solely on having access to money to buy alcohol and some food. Despite their age, the siblings didn't work and behaved as if they were children of a millionaire. Meanwhile, Antonio lived very modestly to save some extra money for his children. Deep down, the man understood he couldn't influence his children anymore. Therefore, he tried not to notice their oddities and not dwell too much on their way of life. "Hello, Dad, how are you?" Carolina asked as soon as he opened the door. Antonio began to respond, but was immediately interrupted by Carolina. "I can see you're fine, you even bought a new sofa." Antonio lowered his gaze and felt embarrassed. He indeed bought a new sofa, because he couldn't sleep on the old one anymore, due to back pains. After entering his father's house, Daniel and Carolina started walking around, examining and measuring every room. Antonio didn't immediately understand what they were doing, but when he did, he started feeling uncomfortable. "You know I have heart problems and need money for surgery, and you really don't need such a big house. After all, it was designed for a family, and you live alone." Carolina began to speak. Antonio wanted to say something, but Daniel picked up where his sister left off. He began to complain about his bad luck and a loan he had taken from the bank. At the same time, he didn't mention what he had taken the loan for. Antonio didn't have the habit of micromanaging his children's every move. After all, his daughter's health was at stake, and Daniel could also suffer if he didn't repay a loan. Given his criminal background, he could even end up in jail. "So, what should I do?" Antonio asked. "In reality, you don't need to do anything. We've taken care of everything. A place has been arranged for you in a nursing home. There, you can spend time with people your age and not worry about the future. You'll always have food and clean clothes," said Daniel. Antonio considered Daniel's words. He didn't want to leave his home at that age, but he also didn't feel comfortable not helping his children. Maybe the nursing home wasn't such a bad idea. There was some reasoning in what Daniel was saying. Otherwise, who would take care of him in old age? Antonio thought he'd have a week or two to pack, but Daniel insisted they pack immediately. "What will happen to my dog?" the man asked anxiously. "We've already taken care of that and found a place for him in an animal shelter," Carolina immediately replied. Antonio felt incredibly bad and guilty because Rex, Antonio's loyal friend for over 10 years, would be forced to live his days in a shelter for stray animals. But on the other hand, Carolina's health was at risk, and Antonio wasn't willing to sacrifice it. So, he started packing, feeling sad. Actually, he didn't have much to pack, he lived modestly. He rarely indulged in new things. The sofa was one of the few new things he had bought some time ago, but it wasn't something he could take with him. "It's okay, Dad, we'll ask the new owners of the house to buy a sofa from you," Carolina reassured her father on the way to the nursing home. Antonio felt very uncomfortable. He worried if he would fit in at the institution and make friends. Meanwhile, Carolina and Daniel were thinking of something entirely different. Mentally, the conspirators were already dividing the money they would receive from selling the house. Carolina had no financial issues, and Daniel hadn't taken a loan from the bank. It was all a scheme to steal money from their father. They had already found buyers and only needed to get their father out of the house. To Antonio's surprise, the nursing home was actually very pleasant. He was immediately surrounded by care, acceptance, and attention. Of course, the institution couldn't replace a real home, but it was certainly better than many other places where the elderly ended up. As they bid farewell, Carolina and Daniel promised to visit their father in a few days. In reality, however, they had no plans to visit him. After selling the house, Carolina and Daniel plunged into a whirlwind of drinks and endless parties with their friends and acquaintances. The money they received from selling the house didn't last long. At the same time, they failed to realize that their father basically had nothing to sell. 2 weeks flew by like a single day for Carolina and Daniel. Waking up from a binge, they realized there was no more money, and something needed to be done. That's when Carolina suggested they ask for their father's life savings, some of which he had set aside for his funeral. Being a prudent and organized man, Antonio always had a certain amount of money saved to cover funeral expenses in case he passed away. Probably many people do that, and Antonio was no exception. Daniel really liked Carolina's idea since easy money always appealed to him. While the siblings were concocting another story to tell their father, Antonio was working on a plot of land located behind the nursing home. It's worth noting that the nursing home was situated in an incredibly beautiful area. A river ran a short distance from the house, and lush forest grew on both sides of the river. It was challenging to build a house there. Only a few privileged individuals could afford to buy land in that location. Antonio put on his gardening gloves and began pruning roses and removing last year's leaves from the lawn. At that moment, from the corner of his eye, he saw a woman heading towards a 2-story house, located half a kilometer from the nursing home. Antonio knew that wealthy people could afford to have a house in such a desirable area. The passing woman's face seemed familiar to Antonio. "Bianca, is that you?" Antonio exclaimed in surprise. The woman stopped and looked at Antonio, who was dressed in work attire. At that moment, a sweet smile appeared on her lips, and Antonio knew it was really her. "Yes, it's me. How did you end up here?" Bianca asked, still in disbelief. Antonio shuffled from one foot to another and began explaining that he had sold the house to pay for Carolina's surgery and Daniel's debts. After hearing her ex-husband, Bianca turned pale. Unlike Antonio, she didn't believe Daniel or Carolina's stories. Therefore, without saying a word, she immediately called her assistant, who handled all sorts of delicate matters. As it turned out, after divorcing Antonio, Bianca married an influential businessman who was 15 years older than her. They happened to live together for a short while. After that, the millionaire passed away, leaving his wife a considerable inheritance. Of course, Daniel and Carolina didn't know that their mother was wealthy and lived in a house that cost a fortune. After bidding farewell to Antonio, Bianca promised to visit him soon, and meeting his ex-wife stirred the warmest feelings for Antonio. Deep down, he still loved her and hoped that one day they could return to their old lives. Bianca's investigation revealed that Carolina and Daniel had deceived Antonio and had already squandered the money they had received from selling the house. At the same time, the cunning children didn't suspect that Bianca would tell the truth to Antonio. When they visited their father, Antonio already knew about the children's deception. "Dad, we need a bit more money," Carolina began, to Daniel's great surprise. Antonio shook his head and said he wouldn't give them anything. "Dad, what do you mean?" Carolina was shocked at that moment. Bianca suddenly appeared, and Daniel and Carolina were visibly uncomfortable. The siblings realized their lies had been uncovered, and they wouldn't get any more money. Moreover, Bianca and Antonio decided to live together, saying, "Live however you want, but forget the way to our house," to the children as they bid farewell. Carolina and Daniel took a long time to recover from what they saw. They couldn't believe their eyes as they watched Bianca and Antonio walk away. Despite the couple's age, they decided to start anew. Now that the former couple had everything they couldn't even dream of before, their lives were sure to change for the better.
They say money changes people, but I believe money doesn't do that. It simply gives you the freedom to be who you truly are. You see, there are many who, upon encountering money for the first time, reveal their worst personalities. They think money is everything, forgetting about more important things like love, health, solidarity, and peace. You may wonder why I'm talking about this. Well, join me in this fascinating story, and you'll see why. While visiting her husband in the hospital, a crying woman asked, "How is he? It's been over 3 months in this bed, and I don't see any improvement in his health." "Don't worry," said the doctor. "I saw him today, and what I have to tell you is that we must have faith. He is a strong man, and every day I see him looking better. We just need to stay positive and pray. He's had 2 heart attacks so far, and on top of that, the insurance covering his expenses is reaching its limit. All the medications they prescribe are expensive," said the doctor. "You always say he looks better, but he's still lying in that bed. Do you think I enjoy seeing him like this? This should end. The truth is, I think the best for him would be to let him rest in peace." "I understand, ma'am, but we need to keep going. Also, the hospital is charging as little as possible. We've seen cases where, after a long time, patients manage to wake up, and the joy it brings to their families is inexplicable." Irina turned to her husband, and after hearing those words from the nurse, she clenched her fists. Then, she left the place. Immediately, she started cursing the hospital and remembered that moment when her husband arrived there. It all began when Irina arrived at the hotel, located in one of the busiest areas of the country. Due to her position as an administrator, she actually went there from time to time to get away from the city. Aurelio was also there. Upon seeing her, he found her to be a very interesting and charming woman. They both felt a strong attraction, despite the age difference of 10 years. They got along well, and later, Aurelio asked her to move in together. After living together, the couple decided on the next step. They stood out wherever they went because they were deeply in love. They had been married for a year, and the couple was truly admirable. They were full of love. Everything seemed perfect. They enjoyed a good life and lacked nothing. Aurelio managed several companies in his country, which were at their peak. His wife, being an administrator, got a job in the main company. They helped each other. But suddenly, one day, she made an unusual request. "Believe me, it embarrasses me to say this, but it would be nice if you gave me a card to cover my expenses. I don't want to be behind you all the time. Sometimes I need necessary things. Besides, consider it as if you were paying me," said the woman, caressing her husband's face. Aurelio didn't think much. He trusted her and agreed. "Okay, no problem. After all, you are my wife." Aurelio grew up in an orphanage. Tragically, his parents abandoned him, and a woman found him when he was a newborn. He never got an adoptive family, yet he received gifts from the person who found him. However, one day he never heard from her again. He was a very intelligent boy and always stood out for his high grades. Moreover, he was very beloved by the workers there. Upon leaving, when he reached adulthood, he studied, and upon finishing, he decided to open his own restaurant, which gradually began to be successful to the point of hiring more employees because he couldn't handle the orders. The business bore fruit, and at the age of 30, he had some branches and even built a hotel in a very busy location. A month later, Aurelio saw that his wife had come home with a new car. "And about this car, dear? Did you ask?" "I bought it. It's nice, isn't it?" "They just brought it," she said. "Why didn't you consult me first?" he asked. "Does it bother you?" she said. "It's just that you should have told me." "Well, I didn't consult you because I thought it wasn't necessary. You have your own car, and I always have to take taxis or buses when I go somewhere. All my friends have cars. Don't I deserve that?" Irina said to her husband, touching his cheeks and kissing his lips. "And now that I have a new car, I can go more comfortably to the company, go shopping, or to the beauty salon. Come on, don't be upset." "I'm not upset, but next time you should consult me when it comes to something so expensive." And one day, coming home exhausted, Aurelio found his wife, who wanted to share a special night with him. But he didn't have the strength for it. "Darling, can we do this another time? I have a headache. I'm very tired. I just want to sleep." The woman got furious, bored in the living room, drinking a glass of wine. She called a friend. "Want to go out?" she asked. "Now? And your husband?" "He's sleeping. Besides, I'm bored." And entering the bar, Irina had fun with her friend, even met her friends. Later, the woman told her husband that it would be good for him to give up some businesses. "Why do you want to do that?" "Aurelio, I'd like to be like you. You'll see how I'll raise the company more than you imagine." "But you can do that. Everything of mine is yours in our marriage." "That's agreed. I trust you very much." "Yes, but there's no document stating that you already have a company. That is, you have yours and I have nothing. I'm just your assistant." Aurelio fulfilled her wish. After all, she was the woman he would start a family with. In fact, they were making plans to have children more in the future because they still wanted to fulfill more dreams in their lives. But soon, Irina started demanding more, and now she wanted a plot of land he had on the beach. Aurelio didn't know what to think because when he told his best friend, who was his accountant, he said, "Be careful, forgive me, but I believe your wife is with you only for interest." "I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. Moreover, the company you handed over to Irina is not making the same profits as the previous months. There are employees who are not being paid." Aurelio thought about those words, and when he said he wasn't going to transfer anything, the woman didn't say anything else. However, her attitude began to change. She was no longer attentive to him. There were arguments and problems. One day, while Aurelio was in his office, he realized that his wife had spent more than she should on unnecessary things, and the company he had handed over was going bankrupt. Suddenly, he heard the door open and saw his wife enter. Irina was wearing a new dress, high heels, and a branded bag. Aurelio experienced a feeling of anguish. "I came to see you, darling," she replied. "Do you like my look?" "How much did all this cost?" he asked, not hiding his irritation. "Don't be stingy, Aurelio," she scolded. "You're a businessman. You can give me these luxuries. Besides, you gave me a card." "What are you talking about?" he asked. "Don't you realize that the company I gave you is going bankrupt? We're on the verge of losing everything, and you're wasting money. You weren't like this." "Well, it's not that bad. Everything will be fine. Besides, it's not my fault. It's because of what's happening in the world. Don't you watch the news? I invested a lot of money in this company," said the man, holding his head. "I don't know. Find a solution." Aurelio suddenly felt a strong pain in his chest and fainted. The woman saw it and said, "Stop pretending, Aurelio, get up. Anyway, I'm going to have coffee with my friend. I'll be back later." Then she grabbed her bag, left the office, and closed the door. Suddenly, an employee who came to clean the office saw it, called the ambulance, and as a result, he went into a coma due to an unexpected heart attack. When Irina found out, she went to the hospital, and she was told that her husband was unconscious, and now she would be responsible for him as his wife. Unfortunately, she arrived too late to arrange for help. "Can I take him home?" asked the nurse. "No, he's still in the ICU. It's not that simple." Time passed, Irina showing herself to be a worried wife, occasionally going to the hospital, but something changed. She suddenly wanted to end him. Without thinking, she grabbed the respirator cable. Fortunately for Aurelio, a nurse entered, and she immediately backed off. Irina left with a bitter taste. For now, she had only one goal: to end Aurelio's life, to inherit everything he owned by law. For days, she nurtured this plan in her mind. She wouldn't accept any failure. In fact, she already behaved as if her husband were a ghost. Yes, she sat in his office and started giving orders to the employees. "Quick, girl, bring me my tequila. Besides, prepare something to eat, and make it for two because a friend will come today." "Yes, ma'am." An hour later, the doorbell rang. "Hi," said Ivan to the woman, who arrived with a bouquet of flowers and hugged affectionately. They ate, drank, and then locked themselves in the room, telling the employee not to disturb them for any reason. More days passed. Irina went to the hospital again. This time, everything should go according to plan. She arrived at her husband's room, who was still unconscious, and suddenly said to his ear, "Darling, today I'm going to relieve you of suffering. But first, let me tell you a secret." The woman leaned close to his ear. "I met a new man. He's wonderful. He really makes me happy. He's my age, fun, understands me, not as boring as you. So, don't worry. When you're no longer in this world, I'll be in good hands. Thank you for leaving me your businesses, your houses, your cars, and all your money. Believe me, I'll put them to better use." At that moment, Aurelio opened his eyes abruptly, and a tear rolled down his face. He heard every word of his wife, each one cutting like a knife. And to think he dreamed of starting a family with that woman, of growing old by her side. But suddenly, he closed his eyes again, powerless. However, the woman, who didn't notice Aurelio's reaction, continued. "By the way, I'm going on vacation this week to the hotel," said the woman, taking a pillow to put on the man's face. However, Aurelio's heart began to beat slowly. An alert light sounded on the machine. The nurse rushed in, calling the emergency doctors. Irina immediately threw the pillow away. Soon, a doctor asked her to leave. "Ma'am, your husband is very ill. Please, leave." She obeyed, and instead of leaving sad, she started jumping for joy. Well, the plan didn't need to be carried out. In the end, he himself will leave this world. But in the afternoon, she received a call. "Ma'am, your husband has stabilized." Upon hearing this, Irina hung up the call and angrily threw the phone. Irina couldn't stop thinking about ending her husband. It was an obsession. She investigated and learned more and more ways to eliminate him. To start a new life without doctors or things that no longer matter to him. This man is worse than cockroaches, so resistant, he doesn't want to go away. Damn it. I must end him, yes or yes. "And you will help me," she said to the lover who was by her side. "Don't worry, dear. You'll see how we'll send him to St. Peter, or better yet, let's travel now." "This is causing me a lot of stress," Irina said. "Yes, let's go to your husband's hotel, the one you said is on the beach," the man commented. "You're right, we need to have fun." Meanwhile, at Maria Hospital, the nurse took care of Aurelio with great attention. "You are a very strong man. It is evident that you have a strong will to live. It's a pity that your wife only shows up from time to time and that you are so alone in this world." Aurelio felt a soft hand wiping his face and suddenly opened his eyes. Again, the nurse noticed and informed the doctor. "The patient has awakened." The doctor came and checked that he was awake. "Call your wife. We need to give her the news," he said. "But where did you get the strength from?" Aurelio, with interrupted words, said, "No, I don't want her to come, please." "Sorry, if you don't want, we won't do it," said the doctor, who then gave him a tranquilizer. After a week, he said to the nurse, "Can I call a friend?" "Yes, of course," she replied, and on the phone, Arturo answered. "So, all this time you've been hospitalized. I found it strange that you didn't say anything. Your wife told us that you had gone on business abroad, and every time I called, only the receptionist answered. I sent you emails and text messages, but you never replied. I told you your wife was interested, but she was very in love with me. I don't know what happened to her. Some people show their true face when they come into a lot of money. I would like to know which hospital you are in to visit you, friend. But first, I would like to ask you a favor." At this point, Irina must be with her lover at the beach hotel. "Take some pictures, that's all I ask, and call the lawyer. Explain that I want a divorce and hand over the evidence." Would you do that for me? All right, I'm coming over now. More days passed while the nurse shaved Aurelio. I said I need to go home. The man tried to move, but couldn't. You've been in a coma for 3 months. Your body needs to recover. You must be patient, said the woman. I can't let her go unpunished. Sometimes it's good to do everything calmly. In this state, she will only manage to ruin things. You know, this woman always gave me a bad impression. Her earthquake was evident. Moreover, I think there's something that could be useful, said the nurse. And after Aurelio felt better, Arturo brought the photos of Irina with her lover, and the lawyer prepared the divorce. With this evidence in hand, the marriage could easily be dissolved. One day, Irina and her lover went to the hospital to carry out their plan to end Aurelio. But when they arrived, they saw that the man was not there. Suddenly, the wife asked the nurse, "What happened to my dear husband? Didn't he resist anymore? Was that what you wanted?" "It's not," said Aurelio, arriving after doing some wheelchair tests. "As you can see, I survived." "Love, are you awake? How happy I am." She tried to hug him. "You are not happy for me. On the contrary, you wanted to end my life. What are you saying?" "Of course not. I heard your confession. I think you're out of your mind." "Aurelio, that's not true." "Then, and what are all these photos?" said the man, taking them from his small table. "From now on, you and I are nothing. I'm doing everything possible to separate from you. You never loved me. You even came with your lover." "Love, he's just a friend, please," she said, kneeling before him. "They are already here," said the nurse. 2 officers arrived and handcuffed the woman. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for attempting to take your husband's life. On the room's camera, your intentions are recorded." The lover, however, remained free and did nothing for the woman. "Sorry, I don't know you," he said to her and left. "You are a coward," shouted Aurelio. He gradually recovered from his illness and realized that Maria, the nurse, was the only one who cared for and supported him throughout this time. This made him feel a great affection for the woman, and they both started a beautiful friendship. Soon, he recovered his businesses, although the company he gave to his wife went bankrupt. He decided to turn the page and move on. Sometime later, Aurelio fully recovered and started a relationship with Maria. One day, he decided to make a donation to the hospital where he was hospitalized to help patients without resources, as well as the orphanage where he had been. However, Maria talked about a lonely elderly woman, very ill, unable to pay for the medicines. Moved, Aurelio decided to visit her. Upon arriving at the room, the elderly woman was speechless to see the great help he was providing. And when he hugged her, she remembered a past 38 years ago, when she found a little abandoned boy and took him home. While cleaning, she noticed a very unusual mole on the left side of his neck. Later, she notified the authorities, who took him to the orphanage. In the following days, she couldn't stop thinking, how can there be such evil people who abandon a child? She couldn't have children, that's why her husband left her. She couldn't adopt him and also didn't have the necessary means, although she left some gifts from time to time. She received a call informing her that her father had passed away, so she traveled to be with her mother. Now, seeing the same mole on Aurelio's neck, she knew it was him. She couldn't believe that she had come face to face with him again. She told the man the whole story, and he was truly surprised. He knew very little, as the nurses at the orphanage told him how he got there, but he never had the chance to meet the woman who saved him on that cold autumn day. If it weren't for her, he wouldn't be there at that moment. Knowing everything, he decided that he would never separate from her. Aurelio and the elderly woman hugged and cried with joy. This story leaves me with a reflection on the value of love, loyalty, gratitude, and justice. It makes me think that money is not everything in life, and that some people let themselves be blinded by ambition and greed, forgetting what really matters. It also makes me reflect on people who suffer from deception and betrayal by those they trust the most. Although I know that there are people who really care for and support us in the most difficult times, and that sometimes life surprises us and reunites us with people who have marked our existence in some way, it is evident that nothing happens by chance. If Irina hadn't been unfaithful to Aurelio, he wouldn't have found the woman who rescued him when he was a baby, nor found true love. Undoubtedly, there is something superior that puts things in order for something better, don't you think? So, when you feel like you're going through the worst moment of your life, think that something very good is about to come. I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you very much for watching. And by the way, I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and activate the notification bell to receive the latest updates. See you soon. May God bless you. On that morning, Helena was clearing the dishes from the table after having breakfast with her 8-year-old son, David, when she saw him get up and head to the bathroom. He didn't stay there for more than a few seconds, at most a minute. Furthermore, she only heard him pee and hadn't heard him poop for weeks. Once, Helena entered the bathroom right after her son left, and that's how she noticed the toilet paper was untouched. There were no smells or signs that David had pooped. Helena's soul froze. Weeks in this situation. How was it possible that she hadn't noticed? Thoughts began to race through her mind, each one more alarming than the last. It could be a simple case of constipation, she thought, trying to be optimistic, but something in her mother's intuition told her this was much more serious. "Let's go to the bathroom. I'll take a look at you," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. When they arrived, Helena asked David to pull down his pants so she could examine him. What she saw next left her completely frozen, speechless, unable to comprehend the strange and terrifying reality she had just discovered. When Helena asked her son when he last pooped, he replied that he couldn't remember. "How do you not remember, David?" she asked, with a tone full of concern. "No, Mom, I don't remember, although I don't feel any discomfort," he says, with innocence in his voice. Helena was very worried about her only child. After that first time she discovered what was happening with him, she had been supervising his trips to the bathroom for several days. On all occasions, the boy only urinated. But at that moment, the situation set off the alarm that began to sound loudly. Every day, in his diet, I give him fruit juices and nutritional supplements for his development, and he seems to be healthy. It can't be healthy for him to go several weeks without pooping. Something must be happening with my son. Helena's thoughts were a bit chaotic due to the situation. Since she had her little angel, she had promised to take care of him with her life. But now, after about 2 years, she was widowed. David's father died of natural causes. So she needed to be very attentive to her son's health. She had promised that to her first husband. Immediately after being alone with David, Helena began working so she could take care of the child, who was only 6 years old when he lost his father. A year later, she met Cesar, her current husband. Cesar and David didn't have the best relationship. They were cordial with each other, although every time they met in the dining room, at meal times, she felt the tension between the child and the adult. "Cesar, you should have a more paternal relationship with David. You treat him as if he were already an adult, and he's only 8 years old," Helena would tell him every time she felt the tension between the two people she loved very much. That morning, Cesar observed his wife's worried face and asked, "Now what did David do to make you like this?" looking at her with a bit of disdain on his face. "Please, Cesar, don't make that face. I'm worried about my little boy. I've been watching him for several days and he only goes to the bathroom to pee. Something must be wrong with him," she tells him, with a tone of sadness in her voice. "There's nothing wrong with that. Can't you see he's healthy? First, he's my son. I won't go to work today. I'll take him to the doctor to find out what's wrong with him," Helena comments as she looks at her schedule to find the pediatrician's office number. After calling the office, Helena calls her son to change clothes as they're going out. When they arrive at the doctor's office, Dr. Samuel is already waiting for them, so they immediately go to the doctor's room so he can examine David. Dr. Samuel had been observing the boy's dynamics for several weeks. At bath time, he only peed, but never pooped, and this had been going on for many days. "This shouldn't be healthy," she says, concerned about her son. The doctor conducts a thorough examination of the boy, palpating his abdomen. Then he determines that there is no obstruction in the intestine. He continues with the physical examination, in which he does not detect any problems in the child. "The truth is, I don't see any problems with the little one, so I shouldn't prescribe anything for him. Keep up with a good diet. At some point, he will go to the bathroom normally. It must be a phase that the little boy is going through," he says to reassure the worried mother. The days continue to pass. Helena continues to observe that her son still doesn't poop. He only goes to the bathroom to pee. Although she continues to provide plenty of fiber in his daily diet, the little one is still constipated. "I have to seek a second professional opinion. It's definitely not normal to continue like this," she thinks as she begins to search for a specialist who can examine her son more deeply. When the day arrives, mother and son go to another doctor's office. Upon arriving, she enters the office, telling the new doctor the reason for her visit. "I'm very worried. My son hasn't pooped for several weeks. One doctor told me he didn't find any health problems, but I insist this can't be normal," the concerned mother comments. The new specialist they consult orders some radiological tests. "Let's see what's going on with him. I'll have several tests done, an ultrasound and an MRI to see if my colleague missed any details." "It happens sometimes," the doctor comments with a serious voice. Immediately, Helena starts acting, taking her son to do all the tests that the doctor ordered. When all the results were ready, she took her son back to the doctor's office. The doctor, upon seeing the radiological tests, also found no problems in the boy's digestive or abdominal system. "Miss Helena, all of this is very strange. The little one shows no abnormality that could cause his constipation. So the only thing I can prescribe is a diet rich in fiber and nutrients." "Explain to me what you see in the tests, doctor," Helena says. "Look, the tests indicate that the little one's intestines are clean. They're empty as you can see here," he says, pointing to the test on a light screen. "Keep explaining. Sooner or later, David will poop. Unless he's already pooping and hasn't noticed. His digestive system is healthy and in very good condition. When a human consumes solid foods, sooner or later, they will have to poop," he comments very calmly. The doctor continues to explain to the worried mother that if the child had any problems in the digestive system, he would feel great discomfort and that the poop would be seen in the radiological tests. Helena was very frustrated with all the explanation, as she had already consulted 2 specialists. Neither of them gave her a viable explanation for her son's situation, who hadn't pooped in the bathroom for about 2 months. She continued to closely observe what he did in the bathroom, but he only went into the room to pee, nothing else. With each passing day, her mind filled with many doubts. How was it possible that her son was eating solid foods and hadn't pooped for weeks? Why does he only pee? These were the questions that continually ran through her mind. The boy enjoyed good health, with tireless energy. The little boy had his daily routine well defined, fulfilling each one without showing any kind of discomfort. That's why his mother became very worried that he didn't poop regularly. A mother's heart told her that her son wasn't as well as the doctors had told her. She mentioned this concern to her husband, Caesar. "This really bothers me because none of the specialists can tell me what's wrong with my little boy. This isn't normal, Caesar," she says, with tears in her eyes. "You're worrying more than you should. David doesn't feel discomfort, it's all in your head. You should just let it go and, as one of the doctors told you, let nature take its course. You just spent a lot of money for nothing," he says, a little annoyed with the situation. "You only care about money, not about our little one's health." "Well, I'm the mother. I'm the one who should be paying attention to his health, to what he does and doesn't do," she comments, turning away from him, irritated with her husband's response. Days continued to pass, and after 3 months of closely monitoring the little one's health routine, Helena was already desperate because her little one still wasn't having bowel movements, although he didn't seem bloated or show any discomfort. For her, it wasn't normal for her son not to have regular bowel movements. Despite being in good health and not having support from her husband, she talks to some friends and tells them about the situation, to whom they give her some advice. "Friend, if science can't explain it, there are others who might be able to solve the situation." "You're right, I agree." Helena, convinced that she needed to find a cure for what her son was suffering from, found the address of the local healer to take him to. The healer, upon seeing the little one, David tells Helena, "What's happening with this little one here? He's got the evil eye," out of envy. "The little ones are the weakest link. That's why they're the first to feel the curses of the evil one," she says with a deep voice. "Mrs. Celestina, what can I do to lift this curse from my son, so that he can heal and return to his normal daily routine?" The healer begins to prepare a series of mixtures with herbs totally unknown to Helena. Mrs. Celestina assures her that with these mixtures, he will be cured of the evil eye and return to normal. "Give him a glass of this mixture every morning before breakfast, so that you'll see that soon he'll have regular bowel movements again," she said with an enigmatic voice. Helena remembers the healer's words, who said that she should give her the herbs with a lot of faith so that their healing power would take effect. So, she immediately starts the spiritual treatment. However, nothing works. Days and weeks continue to pass, and the boy still doesn't have bowel movements. At this point, the boy hadn't relieved himself in the bathroom for about 4 months. On the verge of a panic attack, nervousness, Helena calls her mother to tell her about her concern for her son. "Mom, I don't know what to do now. I'm very worried. David still hasn't gone to the bathroom. He only pees, and every time he goes to the bathroom, I check and he doesn't poop. I've taken him to 2 specialists and a healer, and nothing worked," she said, crying hysterically on the phone. "The first thing you need to do is calm down," she says to calm her daughter with a soft voice, full of wisdom, and continues, "Little David must poop, but he must not remember doing it. Helena, he probably does it at night. At night, you don't supervise him while he sleeps." These words from her mother make Helena think it's true. The little boy probably goes to the bathroom half asleep. Then, he forgets that he actually relieved himself. Therefore, Helena goes to a technology store to buy a small surveillance camera, which she hides in David's bathroom with the purpose of checking what he does at night. The next day, she checks the camera to see what her son does at night, if he goes to the bathroom, and what he does when he goes in. Although what the images show is not what was expected, she sees her son, but he only urinates and then brushes his teeth. Desperate, Helena starts placing cameras in various rooms of the house to see if the child poops somewhere else in the house. She has to find out what's wrong with her son. It was a great mystery that he ate solid and fiber-rich foods, and yet only went to the bathroom to urinate for several days. Helena monitors her son's behavior through the cameras, under her husband Caesar's irritating supervision, who continuously said that David had no problems and that everything was her imagination. Days continue to pass. On a calendar, Helena marks an X, showing that she's been supervising her son for 5 months. The boy continues to not poop in the bathroom. The mother continues to monitor the cameras daily to see what her son does when he gets home. It's incredible and mysterious why her son hasn't pooped for so many weeks. What worsens the situation is the husband's attitude, who becomes a little uncomfortable with the attention she gives to David, who, in his opinion, is perfectly healthy. One day, while checking the cameras in the backyard of the house, Helena sees how her son stands in a certain spot, with his back to the house, makes some strange movements, then gets up and enters the house as if nothing had happened. This behavior made Helena curious, but she didn't pay much attention to it. The next day, she observes how the little one returns to the same spot as the day before, makes the same movements, and returns home completely normally. While reviewing the recordings for several days, she realizes that he does this once a day in the same place. So full of curiosity, Helena goes to the spot, where she discovers a chilling truth. Little David didn't poop because every day the boy went to the back of the house to vomit his food. At least, the mystery of why he didn't poop daily had been revealed. "But I don't understand why he's doing this," she thinks, more worried than ever. Helena begins to understand that the doctors found no abnormality because the nutritional supplements and juices she prepared for him daily kept him healthy. So, in physical and radiological exams, everything came out normal. Seeing this behavior, she desperately calls a psychologist to understand the reason for what David is doing. "I need you to help me understand what's going on with him. David was such a happy and well-behaved little boy. Why is he doing this?" she asks alone with the psychologist. "Let me talk to him for a few hours to find out the reason. There may be many," the specialist tells her. At that moment, David tells the psychologist that, since his mother got married for the second time, she had put him aside. The boy didn't like Caesar at all because he didn't treat him well. He was always scolding him. Since Caesar appeared, the boy felt estranged from his mother's love, so he started vomiting to avoid pooping. With that, he realized that his mother's attention was once again focused on him. The specialist explained to Helena what was happening, besides the reasons the boy presented for vomiting daily. Upon learning the whole truth, Helena begins to cry, remembering how her behavior had been at the beginning of the relationship with her second husband. The woman leaves the psychologist's office to find her son and, upon seeing him, says, "My little one, you are and will always be my most precious treasure. I'll always be by your side when you need me. You shouldn't have felt that way because I married Caesar. The truth is that I didn't take into account your behavior or your opinion. It won't happen again. Please stop what you're doing. Don't make the vomiting happen again. Return to normal. That's not healthy, you know," she says, hugging him. The boy felt exposed, but finds comfort in his mother's loving words and response. "Yes, Mom. This won't happen again, I promise." A few days later, Helena separates from Caesar, with whom she had problems since she started worrying about her son. He never paid attention to what was happening with the boy, so she was very disappointed with what he did. I should have realized that you didn't love my son? Serious, Caesar. Did you think that if I chose, I would choose you? My son is the most important thing I have in life. Obviously, what I choose is him. Moreover, he's a helpless little boy who still needs me. Caesar left Helena in David's life. The boy, seeing his mother's unconditional support, stopped vomiting, returning to normal. When he went to the bathroom, he urinated and defecated normally. Helena occasionally supervised his bathroom visits in case it happened again. Shortly after, Helena meets another man who immediately connected with little David. They both loved each other like father and son, so they accepted each other. Helena married this man after seeing his behavior with David, so they later became a very happy family. Once again, the house was filled with laughter and without worries for Helena. What would you have done in Helena's place? Do you pay attention to the health of the little ones in your home? What home remedy do you have for this situation? This is the end of our story for today, but before we say goodbye, leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the new story, and see you later, folks.
It's always good to listen to the voice in our head, but always remember that the one you should let speak is the heart. Lisette celebrated her 54th birthday just a few days ago. Amidst a fabulous party that night, her children were present, having come from the capital bringing Maria X's siblings, who brought memories from her childhood, and friends who collaborated in that day's celebration, as Lisette was a much-admired woman. The beautiful details she received were from her husband. Everyone was having a tremendous celebration. They drank, ate, and danced. Laughter and conversations filled the air, and the attendees were happy and curious about Ruben. Similarly, for Lisette, it had always been a joy, except for the fact that her husband was absent from the party. It was strange for him to miss such an important date, especially not remembering his wife's birthday. As life filled her mind with roses, gifts, perfumes, and more, Lisette found it unknown what happened to Ruben. And why hadn't he come back home yet? Said Elisette to her sister, fearing for him because something might have happened due to his absence. However, she comforted herself by saying he wouldn't take long to arrive with a beautiful surprise, as always. Lisette calmed down, saying, "Mora, you're right, I'm worrying for nothing, I'm sure he's on his way." As the minutes passed, she danced with her friends, glancing at the clock until she told herself, "I think I'm overreacting. I know Ruben has a lot of work, especially at this time when there are more responsibilities." Very excited, she continued attending to her guests until she received a text message. "Hello love, sorry for not coming, you know I have a lot of work, but I promise to make it up to you. I might be with a beautiful girl," thought Lisette. "I'll be arriving very soon, I love you, see you later." It was midnight, the party ended, and the guests bid farewell. However, Ruben did not arrive. The next day, he arrived very tired, took a shower, and went straight to sleep. Elisette was quite surprised, but preferred not to disturb him. When he woke up, she had prepared a delicious lunch, and while they were at the table eating, Lisette asked, "Love, what happened? I knew you had a lot of work, but not so much that you'd completely disappear in the middle of all my friends." Somewhat irritated, he said, "Woman, please, don't suffocate me now, I'm very tired." Throughout that week, Ruben's behavior was similar. He spent a lot of time away, locked himself in the room for long periods, barely communicating with his wife. He was disorganized. His wife was alarmed by the behavior and, on one occasion, called Vanessa, her older sister, to share some of her concerns about Ruben. "Lisette, I hope you're well, sister. I called for a little chat," said the woman. "I'm glad you called me, but tell me, why do I sense you're a bit distressed? You know, I'm going through a problem now. Ruben is different, he doesn't communicate with me, he's not as detailed, and he locks himself in our room for hours, leaving me completely alone at home. It's strange, he's never been like this, you know. The truth is, I know, sincerely. We're all surprised by his absence, but we didn't want to say anything. He knew it was your birthday, and the least we wanted was for you not to feel bad. I had noticed this behavior in Ruben some time ago, but I didn't want to meddle. Yeah, but do you believe me? Should I worry about my mental sanity? Terrible things are happening, like a hunch. And why, sister? What do you think it is? To me, Ruben has a lover. It's strange that he disappears for hours, stays in the living room for a long time, or that he's simply not the way he used to be, sister. But if you have this hunch, there's something to it. Some time ago, I installed very discreet cameras in my house. I did it because I thought an employee stole some things. However, I found out that wasn't true, but that's another story. I recommend you do that, and thus clear up your doubts. Yes, please. I feel strange about this idea, but I won't dismiss it. Thank you, sister, for listening to me. I love you a lot, and I hope to visit you soon. Take care, fight. You know you can count on me for everything. Several months passed since that conversation, and Ruben's behavior remained the same, disorderly and inattentive. For the past 30 years since they got married, and even before that, Ruben had been a very attentive husband, bringing chocolates, sending letters, and even coming home with flowers. But Ruben was absent from almost everything nowadays. Lisette, very determined, called the security company her sister recommended to install cameras throughout her house. That's how the young technicians came to install them while her husband was out working. They left her with a tablet that gave her access to monitor the house, even the bedroom and the patio. She was sure her husband had a lover. She began monitoring his movements while at home, discovering that when he locked himself in the room, he slept and rushed to the bathroom. From the room, it's really strange, she said to herself. Then, he made a video call on his phone with someone who was smiling and sometimes even crying. Looking at that behavior, Lisette shivered and cried because she discovered that her great love had a lover. She didn't know whether to confront him, leave him, or just cry. She maintained this behavior for up to 2 weeks, and it was the moment when she couldn't bear it anymore and confronted Ruben in the heat of the moment. Ruben, I want to talk to you. Give me just a few minutes. I found out that you've changed for over a year and a half, and I found out that you're seeing someone. Her husband was utterly upset. He told her, but my Lisette, what are you talking about? How am I seeing someone? Yes, you have someone, Ruben. Don't lie to me, tell me who she is, because you're leaving our family. You're ruining my life, Ruben, who knows how long you've been doing this to me. Look, I have you on camera. When you go to the bathroom to talk to her, or even make video calls. I can't take this. When Ruben saw his wife crying inconsolably, he was beside himself, asking for forgiveness. But he explained that the reason for her tears was not infidelity, but that he had to tell her something he had been hiding for a long time, and even after revealing this truth, he would gather his things and leave. The woman, very scared and crying, listened to him without saying a word. Lisette, it hurts me that you think I have someone else, when for many years it has been proven that you're the love of my life. I didn't find the right time to confess to you that I have stage 13 cancer, that my 2 kidneys and lungs are involved, and I can't have time or quality. I tried to work more to ensure a peaceful future for you, and even wanted to leave the house, but I know I can't live without you. Love, forgive me for not saying this earlier, so you wouldn't worry, because there's nothing more to do. I'm taking medicine that makes me drowsy. Unfortunately, it destabilizes me, so I rush to the bathroom to vomit, and the calls you saw are with the doctor who's treating me. Forgive me, darling, for not saying this before, but I wanted you to stay calm. Now I'll gather my things and leave, so you won't suffer anymore. The news was shocking, paralyzing, because she didn't expect such a confession. They hugged, cried, and even forgave each other. In the midst of the conversation, they decided that nobody would comment on what Ruben was going through because they didn't want people's pity amid so much pain. The couple resumed a very honest, secure, and stable life until Ruben's last days. Sometimes, it's difficult to tell or share sad news with our loved ones, fearing to hurt or cause them pain. However, hiding situations that could help us make things bearable causes more pain. Friends, we've come to the end of this story. Now tell me, which part impacted you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And I invite you to share this on all your social networks.
On a sunny morning, Sebastian's heart rested with the promise of eternal love, immersed in the quest for the most sublime flowers that could express his devotion to Angela, his beloved betrothed. She was in a picturesque flower shop, captivated by the intoxicating fragrance and vibrant colors of the flowers. He plunged into a floral ecstasy, meticulously selecting each petal in the hope of seeing Angela's eyes sparkle with delight. The air was imbued with romance and longing for a shared future. Sebastian, the young lover, felt as if he were in a dream, just months away from joining in holy matrimony with a woman who made his heart flutter with every glance. Leaving the flower shop, he held in his hands the majestic bouquet, a reflection of his burgeoning love. However, life has an intriguing way of intruding upon the happiest moments. In his reverie, he stumbled upon a small boy who inadvertently crossed his path. The abrupt shock left the boy staggering, and Sebastian, unaware of his presence, failed to grasp the words the boy uttered. Routine unraveled at that moment, as if the universe conspired to disturb the peace surrounding Sebastian. The boy, with eyes reflecting deprivation and misfortune, timidly approached, and his pleas echoed in the air, revealing a raw and heartrending reality. He begged for financial help, and his small, disadvantaged figure revealed the daily struggle he faced in a world that often forgets the innocence and needs of the most vulnerable. Sebastian, disconcerted by the gap between the impending romantic ecstasy and the harsh reality of the boy, found himself faced with a dilemma in his hands. He held a bouquet symbolizing his blossoming love, but at his feet lay the sorrow personified in the figure of a helpless boy. The sun, which had once gently caressed the flowers and Sebastian's dreams, now seemed to cast shadows that obscured the unexpected morning that promised to be idyllic. Sebastian found himself confronted by the harsh reality hidden behind the facade of happiness after stumbling upon the small Carlinhos, who begged for financial help. With eyes reflecting not only sadness but also urgency, Sebastian's curiosity mingled with sorrow, a situation that seemed too strange to be true. The man, with his heart still pulsating with the echo of his love for Angela, stared at the boy with a mixture of compassion and perplexity as he gathered the courage to ask the boy what he really needed. The response he received echoed in the air, leaving a weighty sensation in the atmosphere. Carlinhos, with sincerity, revealed that he was seeking money to buy medicine for his Aunt Celia. Confusion seized Sebastian, who could not conceive why such a young boy would ask for money for medicine instead of typical childish whims. Curiosity, now mixed with a touch of disbelief, prevented him from inquiring further. He asked the boy's name, and the answer, Carlinhos, resonated in his ears, becoming an unexpected intertwining of two seemingly distinct destinies. Feeling that there was more to the story, Sebastian decided to follow little Carlinhos to the place where his aunt supposedly lived. Suspense grew with each step, as if the universe conspired to reveal a hidden mystery. Upon arriving at the modest dwelling, shadow and silence enveloped the place, sending a shiver down Sebastian's spine. The lights flickered dimly, casting shadows on the worn walls. Entering, guided by Carlinhos, he came upon a dark room where a figure lay on the bed. Tension mounted as he approached, and Sebastian discovered a woman, Aunt Celia, frail and sick. Yet, his surprise peaked when he noticed the unusual elegance of her presence in that modest residence. Carlinhos, with eyes full of hope and fear, addressed the woman in bed. "Look, Aunt Celia, this kind gentleman is willing to help us," said Carlinhos. The woman's gaze met Sebastian's, and in that moment, drama and mystery merged into a narrative more complex than Sebastian could have ever imagined. The needs of Celia and Carlinhos were at the center of a dilemma that challenged his expectations and understanding of the world around him. Shocked by the truth unfolding before his eyes, Sebastian approached the woman lying in bed, Celia, and with a trembling voice, inquired about the burden weighing on her fragile shoulders. Celia, with a gaze lost on a horizon of pain, shared with him the details of her battle against a mysterious illness, a battle she was losing due to lack of resources for proper treatment. The harsh reality was that she could only cover minor expenses. Sebastian, in an act of compassion and humanity, delved into Celia's narrative. Carlinhos watched with attention the quality of life they led, stripped of luxuries and comforts. The kitchen, a few meters from Celia's bed, was a reflection of their economic reality, a worn table by a small stove, a silent testimony of the difficulties they faced every day. The scarcity in their home resonated in Sebastian's heart. Feeling the weight of shared suffering, decided to commit to alleviating their burden. With the privilege of having economic resources, he took on the responsibility of providing medications daily to Celia. This routine became a ritual of hope, where Sebastian became the bearer of relief in the form of small pills and treatments that could make the difference between life and death. The relationship between Sebastian, Celia, and Carlinhos deepened over time, woven by gratitude and desperation, turning into hope. The drama unfolded with each visit from Sebastian, while the uncertainty of the future loomed over the small home. The vulnerability of illness, combined with financial fragility, created a palpable tension, and Sebastian found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions as he struggled to sustain the fragile flame of life in Celia's home. The dangers of the street, which once threatened Carlinhos' safety, were mitigated by Sebastian's generosity and dedication. Suspense built with each gesture, each medication delivered, how much Celia and Carlinhos' fate hung by a thread that Sebastian held with trembling hands. Thus, amidst the drama of everyday life, Sebastian became the protagonist of a story that challenged expectations and explored the limits of compassion and sacrifice. As Sebastian delved deeper into the complicated plot of Celia and Carlinhos' life, trust between them strengthened like a delicate thread weaving hope and mystery. In an afternoon of intimate conversations, driven by sincere curiosity, Sebastian decided to explore Celia's family history. The young woman, with her 27 years laden with experiences and sorrows, shared with Sebastian the touching connection that bound her to Carlinhos. It was revealed that indeed, she was the boy's aunt, the sister of his mother. Years ago, when Carlinhos' mother still walked among the living, the family lived in a world that would soon be devastated by a relentless virus, a virus that claimed the lives of Celia and Carlinhos' parents, leaving behind a land marked by sadness and desolation. At that moment, measures were taken involving the delivery of Celia's modest home, a fragile promise, but full of love, that she remembered with melancholy. Celia's voice broke as she recalled those dark times, but she continued her narrative. In exchange for the house, their parents had expressed a final wish, that Celia become Carlinhos' protector, a motherly figure in his life. Despite being a biological aunt, Celia took on the role of mother from Carlinhos' first breath, committed to caring for him with the same love and devotion a biological mother would have. The plot enriched with each revelation, and Sebastian, immersed in the complexity of this story, found himself caught between the pain of the past and the hope of the present. Celia's connection to her sister, however, added an intriguing twist. Celia's sister, only a year younger, contrasted remarkably in personality. She was a beautiful woman, passionate about the sparkle of nighttime lights at parties. Her heart, however, leaned towards those who could offer a life filled with luxuries and comforts. The duality between the sisters, the sacrificial Celia and the effervescent, more superficial sister, accentuated the complexity of family ties. Sebastian, now immersed in a drama intertwined with secrets and revelations, was at the center of a story where compassion and sacrifice collided with the shadows of past decisions. In every word pronounced by Celia, opulence and humility intertwined. A gentleman enveloped in wealth and sophistication proposed to Celia's sister a glittering life of abundance and luxury. The news of this encounter resonated with enthusiasm in the heart of the sister, dazzled by the prospect of a different life, shared the news with her parents. However, the wisdom of the parents, pillars of rectitude and morality, rose like a beacon in the midst of the storm of emotions. With a serene but firm voice, the parents advised Celia's sister to distrust the charms of this wealthy man. They pointed out the age disparity and, even more crucially, the existence of an existing marriage, a detail that made the offer a morally dubious ally. They emphasized the importance of maintaining integrity and not deviating from the path laid out by decency and dignity. However, Celia's sister, seduced by the promise of a future completely opposite to the present, defied parental advice and maintained a relationship with this man. The flame of romance burned between them, a story that would soon be tainted by cruel reality. Over time, when Celia's sister discovered she was pregnant, the plot took a desolate turn. The wealthy man, upon learning of the imminent arrival of a new being, revealed his true nature. Celia's sister, stripped of illusions and hopes, found herself abandoned on a dark path, where betrayal and disappointment intertwined to weave a personal tragedy. Celia's sister, abandoned and devoid of a hope that once caressed, found herself alone in the midst of the storm of betrayal. The wealthy man, whose charm vanished like a fleeting illusion, left her mercilessly, unwilling to take responsibility for the child growing in her womb, a cruel twist of fate that marked the beginning of a sad story. When the time of birth finally arrived, the echo of betrayal resounded in the arrival of a little boy. Their grandparents, Celia's parents, decided to call him Carlinhos. However, this gesture, intended to be an act of love and commitment, turned into a constant reminder of the disillusionment that haunted the young mother. Celia's sister, plunged into the dark abyss of disappointment, took months to recover from postpartum trauma. During this time, the shadow of abandonment hung over her, accentuating her loneliness and hopelessness. Despite suffering in silence, she resumed her hectic and nocturnal lifestyle, seeking refuge in the flashing lights of nightlife. And on a day like any other, she left home in search of distraction and temporary solace in the darkness of the night. However, the following morning brought with it a terrifying discovery. Everyone woke up with the unsettling feeling that something was deeply wrong. Upon entering the house, the parents of the girls were overcome by the evidence that during the night an intruder had invaded the residence. Anxiety overcame them as they made their way to the room where Celia's sister lay, along with little Carlinhos, their hearts pounded with fear of what they might find. Upon opening the door, the scene that unfolded before them painted a picture of horror and perplexity. Carlinhos's bed was empty, and Celia's sister was unconscious in the dimness of the room. The suspense materialized in the air, leaving everyone trapped in a cloak of uncertainty that further obscured the turbulent fate of this family. Upon crossing the threshold of the room, the anguished cry of a child echoed in the ears of the parents, a melody of lacerating pain that their souls could not ignore. Little Carlinhos, abandoned in his crib, suffered from the hunger that devoured his insides. The scene unfolding before them was a cruel reminder of the inexplicable disappearance of Celia's sister. Upon examining the room carefully, they realized that the belongings of the young mother were no longer there. Everything indicated that she had left in the darkness of the night, fleeing from the burden of motherhood and leaving her baby at the mercy of her own family. The story of the young mother faded into the silence of her departure, sinking into the abyss of forgetfulness. No words, no letter, no explanation, she simply disappeared into the shadow of the night. Years passed and Celia's sister became a ghost in the family's memory. She never returned, not even to cast a shadow of her presence over the fate of her own child. When Sebastian, moved by the sadness surrounding Carlinhos's life, offered his help to find the missing sister, a tacit pact was forged between them. Time passed and finally the long-awaited day arrived, Sebastian's wedding day. In an impulsive gesture, Carlinhos, driven by urgency and emotion, ran towards Sebastian's workplace. Upon arrival, the secretary, aware of the ongoing celebration, informed him that the young man was at the church, immersed in marital vows. With a mixture of nervousness and determination, Carlinhos requested the address and quickly headed to the church, where the union of two souls was in full swing. The scene was set to unfold the next act in this fate-woven plot and the perseverance of a young man longing for answers to the questions that haunted his heart. Upon arriving at the venue, Carlinhos became an unexpected figure amidst the elegant celebration, dressed humbly. With his presence, he became a visual intruder at such a refined event. The guests' gaze fixed on him, provoking whispers and gestures of disconcert. Faced with the appearance of what seemed to be an unaccompanied child at a party, with determined steps, Carlinhos advanced through the premises until he spotted Sebastian, the unwitting protagonist of this plot. He ran towards him, desperation lighting his eyes. He pulled Sebastian's coat, still immersed in the echoes of the recently concluded ceremony. Sebastian turned to him with a mixture of surprise and distraction. Carlinhos explained that, at that moment, Sebastian was busy with the guests and the newlywed. But Carlinhos pleaded for urgent attention. At this moment, Sebastian's bride, observing the drama unfolding, emerged among the guests. Upon seeing the child and hearing his words, she asked her newlywed husband about Celia's identity and why she wanted Sebastian's attention. While Sebastian tried to articulate an explanation, Carlinhos, in a dramatic turn, exclaimed, "Mom, it's you." The bride, between confusion and nervousness, looked to Sebastian for clarification. Sebastian, shocked, tried to explain that there had been a misunderstanding, that she could not be Carlinhos's mother, as she had just become his wife. However, Carlinhos, with a look full of conviction, asserted that the woman holding him in a family photo taken when he was just a newborn was identical to the woman who had just married Sebastian. The tension in the air was palpable as all present were caught in a moment of perplexity and mystery, where blurred lines between past and present threatened to reveal hidden secrets. At this crucial moment, Sebastian, still hesitant, with a veil of incredulity in his eyes, had not fully confirmed the facts that Carlinhos revealed to him, doubts. Sebastian, in a gesture of firmness, communicated to Angela that, from this moment on, she would not have direct news from him. Instead of maintaining direct communication, any matter would be handled through a lawyer. Angela, facing the consequences of her past, felt them with a touch of resignation. Sebastian, with his gaze fixed on the revealed truth, stepped away from that scene that marked the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new reality for all involved. The door of the past closed, but the echo of the revelation resonated in their lives in different ways. Although Sebastian, after the revelation of the truth, distanced himself from Angela with firmness and determination, he never broke the bond that had formed between Celia and himself. Years passed, and with time, a new opportunity presented itself as a twist of fate. Carlinhos, now 13 years old, had grown up under the shadow of that hidden truth, and Sebastian, in an act of courage and love, decided to propose to Celia. The proposal emanated not only from compassion and gratitude for Celia's devotion to Carlinhos but also from a love that had been forged over the years. Sebastian, seeing beyond the tragedy, discovered in Celia a generous heart and an extraordinary woman. In this new chapter of the story, destiny seemed to offer redemption, an opportunity for justice for those who had suffered and those who had caused pain. The marriage proposal resonated like a symphony of hope in the dark corridor of the past. Celia, with tears in her eyes and the echo of the tumultuous story still palpable in her heart, accepted Sebastian's proposal. The wedding ceremony, unlike the previous one, was imbued with a healing serenity. The veil of tragedy lifted, giving way to a future where justice and redemption intertwined. This story, once marked by betrayal and abandonment, found its way toward a just conclusion. The shadows of the past began to dissipate, and love emerged as a beacon guiding these characters through the turbulent waters of their lives. In this new chapter, the bonds of love and family strengthened, creating an indestructible bond between Sebastian, Celia, and Carlinhos. As a testimony that even in darkness, destiny can weave the path toward light. In the complex fabric of our lives, we often encounter unexpected twists and challenges that lead us to explore the limits of forgiveness, redemption, and love. The story of Sebastian, Angela, Celia, and Carlinhos is a reminder that even when darkness threatens to consume us, there is always the possibility of finding light on the journey toward justice and understanding. Second chances can become the catalyst for a new narrative, where love and hope are the driving forces that guide us toward a brighter future. And so, we come to the end of this beautiful and emotional story. If you enjoyed it, don't hesitate to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for watching so far. See you soon with more new stories. A big hug, and may God bless you.
When a shelter puppy was thrown into the same cage as a cheetah, the atmosphere became tense. The two animals stared at each other for a moment, and then something few would endure happened. This story took place on July 16, 2015, when Kago, a shelter puppy, embarked on a journey with a single purpose: to be thrown into a cheetah's cage. Traveling from Alabama to Virginia, his destination awaited him at the Metro Richmond Zoo. Upon arriving at the zoo, Kago found himself immersed in a completely new environment, surrounded by a diversity of animals and visitors. Everything around him seemed strange and unfamiliar, leaving him fearful and insecure. Guided by the zoo staff, he was directed to a special area that would soon become his new home. Little did Kago know, he was about to encounter a cheetah. At that moment, she was not yet big and scary, but still a wild animal. When Kumba came into the world on May 12, 2015, her parents Carrie and Atari, along with the Metro Richmond zookeepers, overflowed with joy. However, this happiness quickly turned into concern when they realized that Kumba, the smallest of the litter, was not developing as expected. At just 2 weeks old, his struggle for survival became evident. Despite his mother's efforts to care for him, he wasn't gaining weight like his siblings. The keepers closely observed, monitoring his feeding and behavior patterns, but what they discovered was disheartening. Kumba seemed weak and lethargic, unable to keep up with his siblings during meals. His siblings bullied him, pushing him out of the way and making feeding a difficult task for him. During a routine examination, veterinarians discovered that Mother Carrie was not producing enough milk for all her cubs, resulting in fierce competition for food among them. It wasn't a matter of malice. The cubs were simply following natural instincts where only the strongest survive. Unfortunately, Kumba lacked the strength to compete with his siblings, and the keepers recognized the urgency of intervening to ensure his survival. With great sorrow, they made the difficult decision to separate him from his mother and siblings, knowing it was crucial for his well-being. The fragile cub was transferred to intensive care, where the team could closely monitor his progress and provide the specialized care needed. The following days were marked by uncertainty and worry. The caretakers tirelessly dedicated themselves, feeding him with a bottle at regular intervals and keeping a constant watch over his delicate health. They adjusted his diet, tried various feeding techniques, and administered medications to treat any underlying health issues. While the young cheetah fought for his life, the keepers clung to hope, refusing to give up on him. Weeks passed until Kumba began to show signs of recovery. His appetite returned, and his movements improved significantly, revealing a playful side that charmed everyone. The young cheetah began to show interest in his surroundings and started playing with the zoo staff, who had become a second family to him. Even though he was still very young, he impressed everyone with his incredible speed. In his moments of calm, he acted similarly to a domestic cat, finding comfort in the arms of his caretakers and purring loudly to express his happiness. As Kumba continued on his path to recovery, the zookeepers faced a dilemma. Although he was progressing and mainly eating meat, reintegrating him into his cheetah family was not a viable option. Aware of the sensitive and fearful nature of these animals, they knew that any sudden change in his environment could cause stress and disruption, what could be fatal for the cub, so the team opted to postpone the reintroduction, prioritizing Kumba's and his family's well-being. Despite the solitary and anxious nature of cheetahs, males of this species are by nature social animals. In the wild, they often form coalitions with other males, and that's exactly what Kumba's brothers had been doing in their family enclosure. However, Kumba was completely alone in the world, deprived of the possibility of reintegrating into his family. The team recognized the need to find him a companion. They were determined to preserve Kumba's wild essence. If he continued to interact excessively with humans, he would inevitably lose all his predatory instincts and become overly dependent on human caregivers. They needed to think of a solution quickly. During discussions between the Metro Richmond Zoo team and professionals from San Diego Zoo, information about another solitary cheetah cub, very similar to Kumba, emerged. Coincidentally, this cub was born around the same time as another zoo resident, a playful dog with a loving personality. While the cheetah cub was reserved, the dog was adventurous and enjoyed human company. During breaks between tasks, the San Diego Zoo team joked that the dog would be the perfect mentor for the cheetah if they could share the same space without conflicts. Then someone asked a powerful question: what if they became friends? They were the same age, and the cheetah had no predatory instincts. With this idea in mind, the team decided to explore an unconventional path by pairing the cheetah with the dog. The idea stemmed from the understanding that cheetahs, despite their fierce reputation, are naturally sociable animals. Recognizing the need for companionship for the cub, the San Diego Zoo caregivers sought a solution that would offer comfort and reduce the stress of loneliness. When this proved beneficial for both animals, global attention turned to this solution. Over the years, this practice became widely known and accepted as a means of improving the well-being of cheetahs in captivity. The benefits were not limited to companionship. Dogs played a crucial role in alleviating the natural anxiety of cheetahs, promoting a sense of security that helped them thrive in a captive environment. The success of the San Diego story resonated throughout the zoo community as news spread. Other zoos recognized the potential of this practice and embraced the concept of pairing cheetahs with dogs. The practice was not without its challenges, and each zoo adapted the concept to the specific needs of its animals. Collaboration between zoos allowed for the exchange of insights, experiences, and best practices, creating a support network for the continued success of this new technique. Based on the San Diego experiment, it was found that dogs exerted a calming influence on wild cheetahs. In most cases, the cheetah followed the behavioral cues of the dog, learning not to fear their environment but to embrace it with confidence. Over time, the dog usually became the dominant figure in the relationship, acting as a protector and leader. While cheetahs, despite being natural predators, did not show aggressive behavior towards the dog, they found comfort in their gentle company. The Metro Richmond Zookeeper team, aware of the success stories of other zoo institutions, sought to apply this knowledge in their own environment. However, they faced a significant obstacle: they did not have a suitable dog available to pair with the cheetah. Thus, they began searching for a shelter dog, one seeking a second chance for a happy life. They were determined to make this connection meaningful for both Kumba and his new canine companion. However, they knew the task wouldn't be easy, as they had specific criteria in mind for the ideal dog. They needed to find a puppy with a calm yet playful personality, someone who could keep up with the energetic cheetah while providing a reassuring presence. The challenge was to find the right balance in a dog that could adapt to the unique needs of the cheetah. With this in mind, the keepers began searching local shelters, explaining their vision for Kumba's future companion. The search was delicate and required patience, but the team was determined to find the perfect dog that would fit seamlessly into the role. Some places hesitated, unsure about the peculiar combination of a cheetah and a dog. However, others saw the potential for a unique friendship and were eager to contribute. Finally, a breakthrough came when they received a call from Art of Paws, a rescue organization recognized for its dedication to helping animals in need. The organization presented a 10-week-old puppy named Kago. Kago was on the euthanasia list, but Art of Paws intervened to give him a chance at a brighter future. Kago had been rescued from an overcrowded shelter. When the keepers saw photos and a video of Kago, they felt an immediate connection with the adorable puppy. He was calm yet playful, seeming to be the perfect match for Kumba. Generously, Art of Paws offered to donate Kago to the zoo, and the decision was made. Kago would be Kumba's new companion. Kago embarked on the journey from Alabama to Virginia, bringing with him the promise of companionship for the young cheetah. As soon as he arrived, the zoo team instantly fell in love with the puppy. His wagging tail and curious eyes melted their hearts. However, amidst the human applause, the real test awaited them. The young cheetah would have the final say in this tale of friendship. When the puppy entered the cheetah's enclosure, the atmosphere instantly changed. The young predator turned to the dog with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Aware of the new presence in his space, a collective silence of anticipation took hold of everyone present as they eagerly watched the unfolding of this decisive scene. Kumba approached the new intruder with cautious steps. The air was tense as the two animals faced each other for the first time. The cheetah sniffed the air, taking in the unfamiliar scent of his new canine companion. The team watched anxiously, their hearts pounding. To everyone's relief and immense joy, Kago seemed to embrace the cheetah's presence. The tension dissipated as Kumba showed signs of curiosity and affection towards the playful puppy. In just a few hours, the dynamic between Kumba and Kago transformed, revealing the first signs of a promising friendship. What started as a cautious encounter blossomed into a genuine friendship. The duo, with their shared enthusiasm for exploration and fun, quickly became friends, and the zoo team celebrated this exciting union. Kumba with his elegant spots and Kago with his furry coat seemed not to notice or care about their differences. Now, the pair could be seen everywhere together. The once anxious cheetah had found a companion who brought laughter to his life. The zoo team marveled at the transformation, realizing that sometimes the most unexpected friendships are the ones that bring the greatest joy. As Kumba and Kago grew up together, their bond deepened even further. The friendship between Kumba and Kago became an exciting attraction at the Metro Richmond Zoo. Families and children gathered to witness the extraordinary bond between a cheetah and a rescued dog. Currently, the Metro Richmond Zoo plans to use Kumba as a living example of the importance of conservation efforts for endangered species. Meanwhile, Kago will enjoy the rest of his days as a beloved mascot. The two best friends will remain together, never to be separated, and will continue to be on display at the zoo for as long as life allows. And if you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, share, and don't miss the next video. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Great emotions come with great stories. Until next time. God bless.
Already past midnight, when Rick Barnes was a police officer in Milwaukee, he received a call that would change his life. At 6 o'clock, he had started his shift and wouldn't leave that post until the sun rose on the horizon. He was accustomed to a night shift in the police force, always very busy and unpredictable, and had already answered calls of all kinds, but nothing like the one he had just received. When the phone rang, Rick answered without hesitation. The phrase "help me," please, coming from a very weak and childlike voice. There was no way Rick could be sure of the age of the person on the other end. So, he insisted, as protocol dictated, "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" "I'm hungry, very hungry," said the voice once again. Rick was unsure how he could help. It was not uncommon for people to call the police emergency needing a service that was not the role of the police force to provide. But he tried to be understanding. "You called the police, you need to call a social service in the morning when they open," said the officer. "Okay," said the small voice. "It's just that I'm hungry," said the small voice. Rick began to suspect that perhaps it was indeed a child and asked who was speaking. The person said his name was Johnny. Rick asked if Johnny was alone, and he said yes, that his mother had left, and it had been 3 days since he had eaten anything. "I don't know where my mom went. She left the water in the refrigerator, but it ran out too. I drink from the tap to try to quench my hunger, but I can't take it anymore." Rick's heart raced in a different way. He knew it was not the role of the police to take care of that case, but the city authorities who could help the boy were not accessible at that time. What would he do then? Rick kept the conversation with Johnny over the phone while thinking about what to do. He asked for the boy's address, but he didn't know the name of the street or the neighborhood. He then began to describe the place to the policeman. Trees, no tall buildings that could help locate, only normal houses. According to the boy, this didn't help the policeman much, but he insisted, asking if he had a phone number written down on the device. Johnny revealed that he had found some coins where he lived and was now at a public phone, not in his trailer. This information was helpful to Rick because he knew where to find places where people usually lived in trailers in the city. Rick took a chance and asked if in his trailer he could hear dogs barking during the day. I hear yes, they have plenty there. Do the dogs there also get hungry? Said the little boy, once again tearing at the policeman's heart. This information revealed to Rick where the boy should be, as one of the trailer areas was very close to a kennel on the outskirts of the city. You'll help me? Said the frail, childish voice. The officer asked Johnny to go back to his trailer and wait for the police. Hold on tight, okay? We'll stay there to see you, he said, trying to disguise the concern in his own voice. But what if you don't come? I don't know when my mom will be back, the boy said. Rick was trying to find a free patrol car to go to a neighborhood, but 2 didn't respond, and 3 others were involved in incidents that early morning. So Rick announced himself and warned the other policemen who were at the Central to take his place. He knew that could lead to a warning from the captain, but he couldn't wait until a patrol car was available. He would personally go to the place and bring something for the boy to eat before it was too late. Before leaving, he asked Nate Long, another policeman, to go with him. They hadn't had their night snacks yet, so Rick grabbed the sandwiches made by his wife and also Nate's and took them to the car. That would be the boy's first meal in 3 days. The other policeman didn't like missing his meal. Look, Rick, I hope this isn't a hoax, huh? He said. After 20 minutes, Rick's patrol car arrived at Johnny's neighborhood. They knocked on the door and announced that it was the police. No one responded, not even a knock with even more force, and they heard dogs barking in the kennel. Worried, Rick decided not to use his authority. Johnny, are you there? Boy, it's Rick. You called me tonight. A few seconds later, he heard a groan from inside the trailer. It was as if an animal was causing damage there and wasn't able to express what it felt. Nate and Rick then broke down the trailer door and saw the boy on the cold floor, holding his stomach. The policeman touched the boy, who groaned again. His voice sounded like a sigh. Rick was already taking the sandwiches out of the package to give to the boy when Nate caught his partner's attention. Further inside the trailer, in another room, a stretched leg could be seen on top of a bed. Johnny wasn't alone. After all, in the room we saw that it was a woman. She seemed to be sleeping deeply. Nate tried to wake her up, gently shaking her over the blankets, but she didn't wake up. Johnny, who is this woman? Is she your mother? You said you didn't know when she would be back, said Rick, passing his snack to the child. The boy then said that his mother had been like this for a long time, that he didn't know when she would wake up again. Sometimes she takes medicine and it takes her a while to wake up, you know? He said as he devoured the sandwich. Nate asked her name and found out it was Marta. He called her by name with an increasingly loud voice. Then he pulled the blanket off her and touched her. She was as cold as a lizard. After seeing the state the child was in, alone, fragile and suffering, the policeman felt a chill run up his veins, causing the hairs on his arm to stand up. Already prepared for a tragedy, he decided to check Marta's pulse. He looked at Rick and tried not to let Johnny worry. After all, he needed to eat. But the worst hadn't happened yet. The woman's pulse was weak, but she was alive, needing immediate care. While Rick took care of Johnny, Nate went out the door to call an ambulance. Rick wanted to distract the little boy, so he started asking, "How long have you been living in that place and what happened to make you run out of food?" Then, Johnny told that it all started about 10 days earlier when his mother had returned early and very upset from work. Marta worked in a clothing factory in the stock department. Every day she lived organizing thousands of boxes with orders for stores and brands, carrying boxes from one place to another. It wasn't an easy job, but she faced the challenge to support her son. She had been a single mother since Jack, her husband, died from an aneurysm. Without enough income to pay the rent for the house they lived in a suburb of the city, she found herself with no choice but to rent a trailer in that neighborhood near the kennel. Marta and Johnny were never rich, but they had some comfort when Jack was still alive. It was a very abrupt change in their lives, from 1 hour to the next. Johnny no longer had his old friends, nor the same clothes, and even the food became scarce. But he knew his mother was suffering and being strong enough to provide the minimum of food and shelter for him. Working in the factory always left his mother exhausted. That's why she had started taking some medicine to relax. As far as Johnny knew, his mother hadn't consulted any doctor before starting to take it. She didn't even go to pharmacies. He had once seen a factory coworker hand her the pill bottle. Sometimes Marta slept for a long time, which worried her son, but she always woke up. It turns out that 2 months ago, the owners of the textile factory decided to install new machinery in the company to organize the stock. This greatly reduced Marta's workload. What she used to do in an hour, looking at spreadsheets and asking colleagues questions, the system did in 15 minutes or less. It was from that moment on that Johnny began to notice that his mother came home not physically tired anymore, but rather nervous and anxious. "Oh son, what's going to happen to us? Huh?" she would say to the boy, but he didn't understand what she meant. It was during this period that she began to take more medication and take longer to come back. So, 10 days ago, the factory owners sent Marta away. The automated system had made her and others' roles obsolete. Marta had feared this would happen, but hoped she would be given a job in another area of the factory. But that didn't happen. In the last 2 years, she hadn't been able to save any money. The low salary only covered the trailer rent, food, clothing, and almost nothing else. Without a job, she completely lost the ability to maintain housing. They rationed food as much as possible. Marta even tried to buy food on credit, but the market wouldn't allow it. Desperate, she cried every day. She thought about going out on the street with Johnny to beg for food, but ended up giving up the idea so as not to make her own child go through that humiliation. By this point in the story, Johnny had already finished eating the sandwich from Officer Rick. But instead of getting happier, the story had reached its saddest point, making Johnny cry. He recounted how he and his mother had been completely without food in the last few days, and the woman had taken her medication to help forget about hunger. And while the boy became weaker and hungrier, Marta slept without waking up. Johnny stopped telling the story when 2 paramedics entered through the door accompanied by Officer Nate. It was only when they managed to remove his mother from the bed that the boy realized something more serious was happening. "What's happening? Mom isn't just sleeping?" He began to cry more intensely as the men placed her on the stretcher and carried her into the ambulance. Rick Barnes picked the boy up and assured him that everything would be fine, that they would go together to a hospital. Johnny rode in the ambulance with Rick. Marta was admitted to the emergency room urgently, while Johnny was examined by an on-duty doctor. Both were diagnosed with malnutrition and dehydration. The child received 4 fluids and regained some strength, while his mother had to stay hospitalized for a few more days because the medication she had taken worsened her condition. Upon hearing this, Johnny became very insecure and frightened. "But what will happen to me now, Rick?" He hugged the boy and told him that there were social workers at the hospital who would take care of him in a different place, just until his mother recovered. When the man prepared to leave, the boy hugged him tightly. "I don't want to stay here, Officer Rick. They'll take me to an orphanage. My mom won't find me anymore. Don't let them do that, please," he said, the officer. He had already left his post to respond to that incident and stay outside until dawn. It was certain that he would receive a reprimand from the captain. But what could he do? He couldn't pretend that the boy didn't need help. So Rick thought about taking him home. His wife would have a big surprise, but since they didn't have children, maybe accommodating a boy for a few days until everything was resolved. He spoke with the hospital social workers and signed the necessary papers. Upon returning, he took the boy's hand and said, "You'll stay with me until your mother gets better. Okay?" The boy smiled and held the officer's hand. Before going home, Rick stopped at a diner so they could both have something warm to eat. As he watched the boy eating with such gusto in front of him, Rick wondered why he hadn't had children. Maybe he was afraid of fatherhood, but at that moment, he saw that if that was the case, he had nothing to fear. Maybe he would be a good father. The boy had a hearty meal with proteins, fibers, and carbohydrates before they left. He ordered a natural juice so that Johnny wouldn't show signs of dehydration again. Now, he was already talking with much more energy in his voice and disposition. The boy said he missed his father and the life he had. But he tried to be a good son, so that his mother wouldn't have another worry in life. He went to school every day, but since they ran out of food, he stopped going. Inside the car, on their way to Rick's house, Johnny said he was happier now that his mother was being taken care of in the hospital. "I'm glad you helped us." Rick's heart fluttered with emotion upon hearing those words from the boy. He had received thanks throughout his career as a police officer, but there it had a special flavor. Rick's wife was already waiting for the boy with new clothes and a bed ready for him in a guest room. The next morning, when Johnny woke up, he went to the kitchen and noticed that Rick and Sonia had already prepared breakfast for him. "It's been over a year since I had something like this." "Thank you, Officer Rick," he said shyly. "You don't need to call me officer, just Rick is fine. You're family now," the officer replied as he served a pancake for the child. Sonia took Johnny to school, and later Rick picked him up. On the way back, they stopped at the hospital to see Marta. They were surprised when they entered the room and saw the woman awake. Johnny ran to the bed and hugged her, calling her name. Marta cried tears of joy at being able to see her well-fed son. She still looked tired and pale, but her appearance was already better than the day before. "Mom, this is Rick. He's a policeman. He saved us," the boy said when Rick introduced himself, and he could feel that her skin now had a normal temperature, free from the morbid impression of when she was unconscious inside the trailer. Marta smiled at the officer and thanked him for all his help. She began to sob and cry again as she spoke of the problems she had experienced and how she had been a terrible mother. "I didn't know what to do. I was desperate, almost gave up on life. And even though I failed," she said, deeply saddened and guilty, "now, I look at this little guy and thank God for staying alive and for you coming to see us. I can't give up, but I don't know when I'll be discharged." Rick warned that Johnny would stay at his house for as long as needed, and that Marta only needed to rest and follow the doctor's instructions. "By the way, you raised a very smart and responsible boy," he praised. The following days were all like that. Sonia takes Johnny to school, and then Rick takes him to see his mother. The police captain even considered giving Rick a new warning, but upon learning that he ultimately saved the child and the mother's life, and that he was now taking care of the boy, he decided not to do anything. The police colleagues, in fact, felt honored to have Rick Barnes in the force for all the dedication he showed in that case. 2 weeks later, Marta was discharged from the hospital, and Rick took them back to the trailer. The officer was happy to have made a difference in that family's life, but he had grown accustomed to Johnny's presence in his house, so he promised that it wouldn't be a farewell. They continued visiting mother and son several times, and it was upon the police officer's wife's recommendation that Marta found a job as a secretary, a much less stressful job that paid much more than she earned at the factory. Shortly after, Marta had regained a taste for life and never resorted to any medication again. Now, they could finally have a dignified life. 6 months after answering that call to 911, police officer Rick and his wife received spectacular news. They were expecting a child. Upon hearing the news, the officer embraced his partner and cried tears of joy. He remembered the boy Johnny and silently thanked him, knowing that if he hadn't crossed his path, he might never have had the courage to become a father. As if everything were mysteriously connected, answering that call changed his life forever, and his mission now was to try to be the best father in the world. If you enjoyed the story, please kindly leave a like. The other video that is appearing on the screen now will probably also move you. Enjoy your session and see you in the next video.
Story. Mother notices that her daughter has been emitting a bad smell for days. So she takes her to the doctor and discovers something terrible. Amelia was born into a very humble family. Her father planted corn, and when it was harvest time, Her mother would prepare various meals using the golden grain and then go out to sell them at a small stall near the city's best university. Amelia was the only girl, as the other 3 children were boys, so her mother always took her along to sell food. The girl was quite clever and, with a strong voice, would announce each of the products her mother was selling. Ever since the girl learned to read, she began to be interested in the novels published in gossip magazines. The economic conditions of her family didn't allow her to buy this form of entertainment, so her mother would visit a sister who lived in the neighboring city every month to have her deliver the magazines she had already read. Amelia was happy every time she saw her mother arrive with a bag full of the famous magazine and assured herself that one day her name would be printed on those pages. The lady laughed and encouraged her to dream big every time she went to the stall to sell. The girl sighed at the immense university nearby and also said she would study there. Her father often expressed his desire to see her become a successful professional, as men were usually lazy when it came to studying. Their goal was to buy more land to increase the production that their father had achieved over his lifetime. The boys were united and wished to have wives and children who would work on the land. Their father began to save penny by penny with the idea of making his daughter's dream of going to university possible. This was done in secret, but when his wife discovered the hiding place of the money and he told her what the purpose was, she said she would contribute as well. Every day, the lady set aside 10% of the profit from food sales to deposit into the savings box. Amelia was only 9 years old when her parents started saving, and she had no idea of the sacrifice they were making. The girl, on her part, was an excellent student and excelled in literature class. She liked to write stories and always read those magazine romances that might not have been appropriate for her age, but they were the only entertainment she could have. Although they lived on a small farm, it wasn't in the outskirts of the city, so she had a great chance of studying, thanks to her excellent grades. That was even more feasible. She attended high school at a private school, where they even offered her a scholarship to study journalism. The only condition she had to fulfill was to maintain good grades throughout the years. Amelia was happy and studied with greater zeal to achieve her big high school dream. In high school, she was the best student, and that's how she secured her scholarship. On the same day, her parents gave her all the savings they had kept for her, and she cried with happiness. Months later, she entered that enormous university campus full of dreams, and from the first day, she was focused on maintaining her good grades. The young woman began to stand out until she earned a full scholarship, participated in writing contests, and always won. She was also doing an internship at a TV station, where she was doing so well that she was hired for the main news broadcast. She was only in her second year of her career when she got that job that allowed her to buy a used car. At the television channel, she met Raul, a handsome guy who was the sensation of everyone. Although to her, he was just another arrogant guy, the girl didn't pay attention to him. That bothered him to the point that he could say he didn't like how she presented the news, but at the channel, they held her in high regard, and everyone told him he was completely wrong. The girl graduated with honors, and her colleagues threw her a big surprise party. She was happy, unaware that that night would mark her life because Raul took the opportunity to declare his love for her. He assured her that he was madly in love and that they could even get married. At first, Amelia was incredulous, but seeing the man's insistence, she ended up accepting. Her best friend told her she was crazy because that man was not trustworthy, but she didn't understand the reasons at the time. The news of their relationship spread quickly, and everyone found Raul's behavior strange in those days. Amelia's happiness couldn't be greater, as she received a call from the magazine she had been reading since childhood, offering her a much better salary than she already had. Raul tried to clip her wings. He told her that if she left the TV station, their relationship would deteriorate because they wouldn't see each other with the same frequency. But she wasn't willing to give up her dream, so she traveled to sign her contract. Now her job was in another city, so she commuted daily in her modest car. She managed to attract readers very quickly. In this way, months passed, and in reality, her relationship was ending every day. Deep down, it seemed that Raul couldn't bear her success. A year later, when her professional life was at its peak, Amelia found out she was pregnant. When she told Raul, he laughed and said he wouldn't take responsibility for that child, and now she would pay for the disregard she had shown before. Far from crying or feeling sad, Amelia made the decision to move to the city where she worked. She received full support from her bosses and her parents, so she was determined to be happy with her pregnancy, regardless of Raul's abandonment. When her daughter Marissa was born, the young woman knew she had made the best decision. She spent her maternity leave accompanied by her mother, but later the lady had to leave. She hired a nanny, but months later discovered that the lady wasn't feeding the girl, who was just over a year old. At that time, she asked for permission to work from home, and upon explaining what was happening, her bosses, of course, supported her. From that moment on, she devoted herself to taking care of her daughter, but it was difficult to balance work and being an excellent mother. However, in the first few months, she was victorious, but as the girl grew, she became more mischievous and stressed her mother more and more. In her email, the call for a journalism contest arrived, and her colleagues told her that, of course, she had to participate. So, she was focused on producing the pieces that were to be written, and in that rush, she neglected the girl twice. She was very proud and didn't want to ask her mother for help, so she continued with the idea of being a mother and working from home. The stress led to weight loss, but her effort, the truth is, paid off when her work was the winner. This meant much more prestige for the editorial team she was part of. The award they received was significant, so everyone was happy. At that time, Amelia got used to her daughter being in a small playpen to avoid her getting hurt when climbing or descending. One more afternoon, when she approached to caress the little girl, she smelled a bad odor coming from her. It was a terrible smell. She thought the little girl had soiled herself and went to give her a bath. Her diaper was completely clean. So, she perfumed her and changed her clothes, but the bad smell persisted. The woman was really worried, but that day she couldn't take her to the doctor because she had a task to deliver the next day. She also didn't have time, but upon telling her mother, she declared that the girl should be her priority. The woman understood the message and asked for leave from work. When she arrived at the clinic, everyone noticed the bad smell and covered their noses. The illustrious journalist was feeling sorry, and when it was her turn, the doctor was surprised because after checking the girl, he couldn't find an apparent cause. The only thing she had were signs of nasal congestion. The specialist didn't know what to do until he decided to examine the girl's nose, and there he found the unimaginable. The girl had a piece of sponge stuck in her nose from the playpen her mother had put her in. The sponge had rotted, and a few more days, that would have cost the girl's life. The doctor had to call a surgeon, and they had to anesthetize her so they could remove the sponge from the girl's nose. A week later, Marissa was fully recovered, and her mother learned the lesson to be more attentive. From that moment on, despite continuing to work from home, she hired a nanny to exclusively care for the girl. Friends, we've reached the end of this story. Tell me what you thought, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring content like this. Until the next video, guys.
The dog felt lost and scared. Her owner abandoned her on the road and left. However, something unexpected was about to happen. Bruce opened the car door and placed the box with the puppies on the seat quickly. Gracie, the dog, leaped behind the puppies, driving frantically. Bruce continued driving, turning onto a narrow path leading to the stream in about 5 minutes. He parked the car, grabbed the box, and tossed it into the tall grass, barking anxiously. Gracie jumped after the box without looking back. Bruce accelerated, retracing the same path they came from. Now Gracie was alone, taking care of her puppies. How had all this happened? Would Bruce return someday? Gracie could only lament that the last days had been so difficult. It was a Sunday morning, and Gracie had just woken up. However, the feeling of awakening no longer brought joy as before. Bruce, her owner, was no longer the same. First, his wife Janet left and never returned. Then Bruce stopped working. Most days, he simply woke up, opened a beer, and sat on the porch, consumed by a rage that he often took out on Gracie. The dog was pregnant, her protective instincts were heightened. If Janet were present, maybe dealing with the situation would be easier. However, with her absence and Bruce's unpredictable behavior, Gracie found herself completely alone and vulnerable, not knowing what Bruce might do. In recent days, Bruce had been negligent about Gracie's food. She was really hungry. It was then that she noticed the slightly open door. Driven by hunger, Gracie decided to risk it and pushed the door, entering the kitchen. She was nervous. If Bruce caught her inside, she would be in trouble. Despite the temptation to give up, the intense hunger pangs encouraged her to continue. In the kitchen, among dirty dishes and Bruce's dinner leftovers, Gracie found a forgotten sandwich and devoured it quickly. At that moment, Bruce came downstairs with a beer in hand, his smell strong and unpleasant. Gracie always avoided him when he was like this, as he became especially cruel. Upon sensing his presence, Gracie tried to run towards the back door but wasn't fast enough. Bruce spotted her and leaped the last steps to intercept her. Gracie felt a deep fear when faced with Bruce's menacing gaze, which no longer seemed the same. Bruce tried to kick her, but Gracie skillfully dodged and managed to reach the back door, escaping before Bruce could grab her. Gracie returned to her kennel in the backyard. For a moment, she feared Bruce would follow her, but he gave up the chase, hurling curses at her. Bruce slammed the back door, leaving her there without checking her food or water. Trembling with fear and hunger, Gracie felt the puppies moving inside her, and her only certainty was that the incident with Bruce was not over yet. Worried about her own situation, Gracie needed to get Bruce's attention to get food and water. Bruce was sitting on the front porch, surrounded by a pile of empty beer cans. Gracie tried to approach, but upon noticing her, Bruce reacted aggressively, shouting and throwing empty beer cans at her direction. Disheartened, Gracie returned to her kennel, hungry and thirsty. Her instincts told her that her puppies would be born that night. In the distance, thunder rumbled, announcing the arrival of a heavy rain. If it were Janet, she would have brought Gracie inside during a storm like this, but Bruce didn't. Gracie retreated to the farthest corner of her kennel. The first two puppies were born almost simultaneously with the first raindrops. From then on, the birth of the puppies seemed synchronized with the storm. Each lightning was followed by a puppy's birth, and each thunder was accompanied by another. As the rain fluctuated in intensity, more puppies were born. At 3 a.m., Gracie had given birth to a litter of 9 puppies on Monday morning. Bruce woke up early. Gracie watched as he walked out the back door holding a beer. He stood still for a moment before remembering her and heading to the kennel. Gracie positioned herself at the entrance of the kennel, trying to protect her puppies. However, Bruce pushed her roughly and looked inside, his expression darkening instantly. First Janet leaves you here for me to take care of, and now you want me to take care of these puppies too. That's not going to happen. Bruce fetched a cardboard box from home, pushed Gracie aside, picked up the puppies one by one, and placed them in the box before walking toward the car. Gracie was terrified. She wanted to protect her puppies and attack Bruce, but she knew it would only result in more violence against her and her puppies. So she made the only move she considered safe: she stayed by Bruce's side. Bruce placed the box of puppies on the car seat and then said, pointing at Gracie, "Are you coming with your puppies, or should I find another solution for you?" Even without understanding his words, Gracie jumped into the car. Bruce drove down a muddy road, grumbling constantly. When he stopped, he threw the box out of the car. Gracie jumped out of the vehicle and ran towards her puppies without looking back. Bruce closed the door and returned the same way they came. After checking each of his 9 puppies, Gracie sat next to the box, feeling helpless and completely alone. Thirsty, she ran to the stream to drink water and quickly returned to her puppies. She waited for Bruce's possible return. If he didn't come back, she didn't know what to do. Then, on that sunny morning after the previous night's rain, Clara, a woman who managed a store specializing in healing and wellness products, was heading to the stream to gather some mushrooms about 1 kilometer away. She heard the sound of a car approaching on the dirt road. The engine roared loudly. When the vehicle passed her, it was at high speed. Clara briefly saw the man behind the wheel and immediately noticed his bad mood. His face was scrunched up, and he seemed to be grumbling to himself. Poor man, thought Clara. He's missing out on the opportunity to appreciate the beauty and peace of this wonderful morning. Gracie spotted Clara even before the woman noticed her. For a moment, a spark of hope lit up the dog's heart. If Clara were a kind soul, maybe she could help. Remembering how Janet appreciated such kindness, Gracie sat up straight, tilted her head, and perked up her ears. That's when Clara noticed the dog. "Oh, how beautiful you are! What are you doing here alone?" exclaimed Clara as Gracie approached her. Clara began to gently stroke her ears. Gracie felt comforted by Clara's tenderness. After allowing a few caresses, Gracie looked back and whimpered. Clara was confused and reached out to pet her again. However, Gracie recoiled, whimpering softly and looking back. Realizing that Gracie was trying to communicate something, Clara followed the dog through the tall grass until she found the box. Opening the box and coming face to face with the 9 puppies, Clara was stunned. Initially, she had thought Gracie was just lost, but the 9 puppies in the cardboard box told a much sadder story. Gracie and her puppies had been abandoned, and the angry man in the car she had seen on the way to the stream was likely responsible for such inhumane act. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Clara acted quickly. She picked up the cardboard box with the puppies, looked at Gracie, and gestured for the dog to follow her. Understanding Clara's signal, Gracie felt immediate relief as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Since that fateful day, 2 years had passed, and Clara's life had changed significantly. Previously, she managed her store alone while attending to her patients at home. However, after rescuing Gracie and her puppies, her family grew from 1 to 11 members. Now the puppies had grown up, each with their own personalities and quirks. Meanwhile, Bruce's life had taken a disastrous turn. After abandoning the dogs near the stream, he tried to get rid of everything that reminded him of Janet. His alcohol dependence only increased, leading him to lose control of his life rapidly. Bruce lost his job, after losing his house and, ultimately, his car. With only a tent and a backpack, Bruce found himself forced to settle near the stream where he had abandoned Janet's dogs. He survived by doing odd jobs in town, earning just enough to sustain his alcohol addiction, but little more. Without washing his clothes for months, his body odor became unbearable, and he lived in a constant state of drunkenness. It was in this deplorable state that Clara and Gracie found him. One morning, amidst the banks of the stream, Gracie's reaction upon seeing Bruce immediately worried Clara. The dog showed signs of alertness, softly growling as she approached the man. "Easy, girl," Clara said, stroking her head. "It's okay. What do we do when we see someone in need? We help, of course." Bruce was visibly drunk, barely able to stand. Carefully, Clara slid her shoulder under Bruce's arm and led him to her home. After being taken in by Clara, Bruce spent 2 days recuperating in an atmosphere of care and compassion. Holding a cup of black coffee in his hands, he looked at Clara and said, his voice low and laden with remorse, "I know this dog. I did something terrible to her." Clara looked into Bruce's eyes and replied gently, "I know. It was clear from her behavior when we found you by the stream. Animals have a special way of showing us their emotions and wounds." With tears in his eyes, Bruce murmured, "I don't know how to fix all this. I feel completely lost." Smiling gently, Clara said, "First, you need to find yourself and forgive yourself. Recognizing your mistakes is the first step to redemption. And believe me, the dog will forgive you too. Animals have an incredible capacity to forgive and love unconditionally. With these comforting words, Bruce felt a glimmer of hope. Days passed, and Bruce volunteered to help Clara in her store and attended local support groups to overcome his alcohol and impulsive behavior problems. Over time, the relationship between Bruce and Gracie began to transform. Under Clara's guidance and patience, Bruce learned to build trust with the dog and her puppies. Through Clara's love and compassion, and Gracie's incredible forgiveness, Bruce learned to forgive himself and find a new purpose and meaning in his life, showing that it is possible to find light even in the darkest and most challenging moments of life. My friends, we have reached the end of this beautiful story. If you enjoyed it, please leave your like and share, and if you're not subscribed to our channel yet, subscribe, hit the bell icon to receive notifications, and until the next video, God bless you.